Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Tuesday, May 12th adopted budget work session for the Board of Carroll County Commissioners. As we always do, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I hope everybody is doing well, and for anybody who's interested, these are the last couple of work sessions, possibly the last one today, regarding any additions or alterations we may make to the FY27 budget. Heidi, did you and Ted want to say anything to start with, or should we just go straight into it?
Well, Ted's not here, so I'll start. So you do have in front of you an agenda for this morning. The first thing on there is the summary of the public hearing comments. So we had 17 speakers, and you can see the list of what kind of comments they had. So that is in front of you. In addition, we do have a couple of changes from the proposed budget. Do you want to go through those? Okay. So the first one, the corrections operating budget is going to be increasing. This is due to an anticipated inmate medical renewal cost. So we have included that in the budget. We are also, this one's a little more complicated, we are separating the courthouse annex roof replacement project. Previously, this was included in the County Building Systemics Renovation Project, which is one of our CIP projects. However, we've gotten some grant funding, so we're separating that project out. So that project will appear as a new project, even though it is not technically new. And we'll have a mixture of grant funding, new bonds, and we are reappropriating bonds from the existing county systemic project. Now, would you like to take over?
Okay, and I was late because I was checking on your procedural question, and I believe what I said was right. Tim is still looking at it, though.
All right. Thank you very much, Ted.
We had a couple changes in state funding for school capital projects. One was a good one at Carroll Springs. The bid came in higher than anticipated, but the state agreed to increase their funding. The other is there's a special pot of capital money, the enrollment growth and relocatable classroom funding. We were concerned that we weren't going to be eligible for this anymore, and as it turned out, at the last minute, we found out that we lost $3.6 million of state funding we were anticipating. That changes nothing in the short term for you, but what it does is move a project that was in 28. Sorry.
Carrolltown was in 27, so it goes back to
Oh, okay.
28. Piney Ridge goes back from 28 to 29, and then Winters Mill goes out of the plan.
Ted, what was the rationale for that? What was the reasoning?
It's based on our enrollment, our loss of enrollment.
Even HVAC stuff?
Well, it's not so much that it's about the HVAC. Okay, I'm sorry. What's your question again?
Oh, it's the HVAC replacement at Carrollton. What was their rationale for not, that wouldn't be based on enrollment?
Okay, it's not really about the project. It's about our eligibility for funding for any project out of that pot of money.
And which pot was that?
The enrollment growth and relocatable classroom. And this was not a total surprise. We had some rumblings that this might be what was going to happen, but it wasn't until just in the last few days that we actually found out. And then we are looking to move funding from existing school capital projects to other projects now. And they're all five are pre-K additions where we have some money remaining. And they have this in front of them.
Yes.
So
These
they're
are the
not
five.
asking for more, they're reallocating.
Yes. And then all the way at the bottom, you can see the current bottom line for our op plan with all the choices you've made to this point.
All right, well, thank you very much, Ted.
So Ted, on these kindergarten, these additions, pre-K additions, they're just extra money, they're not new projects. You're adding money to the project that already exists.
We are taking money from projects that have funding they won't need to fund projects that are coming.
So does that mean these projects that are already in there, their costs went up? Is that why?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so these all are just existing projects, costs gone up, and we're reallocating money from somewhere else. Thank you.
All right, well, everybody's all right with it. I'd like to start off this morning. Everybody is familiar with the two things that I'd like to raise and two things I'd like to have added to the FY27 budget. Won't come as a surprise to anybody. So the first thing I'd like to request is to add $100,000 to the FY27 budget for an anti-MPRP fund. Of course, everybody knows our efforts against the MPRP power lines are ongoing, and we're involved directly now with county property. And we've stood with our citizens from the beginning, and we always will. But now PSEG, with their greed, their hubris, and the sheer scale of the project, means that they're also going to be coming after the county's property and easements as well. And so that directly involves the county in a legal, personal way with respect to public property. And as everybody knows, our council is participating in a hearing today about the very issue of rights to public property. And so no matter the outcome of that, we're going to continue to fight the MPRP, and we're always going to stand alongside our citizens and lead the way wherever we can. And so previously, we had agreed that we were going to set aside some money for legal fees, and Commissioner Gordon took the lead on that. So I want to take things a step further today with an all-encompassing anti-MPRP fund for $100,000. And yeah, we've checked with staff, and such a fund would become a new category under the Commissioner's Office section of the budget. And basically, what we would use this for would be everything from legal fees, staff overtime, research and analysis, printing and production, public relations, signage, relevant consulting, strategy building, coordination efforts, basically anything that our efforts would entail requiring an expenditure to defeat the MPRP. So that's basically my my rationale for wanting to create this $100,000 anti-MPRP fund. And so,
Can I ask
yeah.
a question before you
Sure.
formally make the motion and second it? People, including the state, are finally going after PJM for our electrical rates. Do we want to include that? I mean, that's just popped up, and we definitely need to be involved in that fight. Do you want to include that in this, or do we want to talk about that separately?
I think that's a perfectly rational idea. I mean, I guess that would kind of fall under the whole anti-MPRP thing.
Yes.
And the things that I listed here were not, certainly not an exhaustive list. But if that's part of the fight that we're overall involved in, then yes, absolutely. So
Okay.
I'm totally in favor of that.
And I would have to agree. I've been saying since day one, we're going to win this on the costs involved, and this is not necessarily the most economical path to take for our ratepayers. The rates are going up tremendously, and the Office of People's Counsel came out with a report this week, I think I forwarded it to you, about $2 billion worth of costs they believe are being put into rates because, or they're trying to get into rates because of what's going on with MPRG, and they haven't even built anything yet. So the rates going up and the inefficiency of what they're doing with this project, forget all the other arguments, which are good ones, but this affects everyone in the entire state of Maryland. Well, that's not true. It affects everyone in the, I guess it would be everybody on distribution that gets electric in the state of Maryland, and the distribution rates are going up, and it hasn't even hit yet this hasn't even been put into the distribution rates yet, this amount of money. And the Office of People Counsel has been all over that, and I think people do care. Their electric bills are outrageous, and we haven't even started this project. It is not the most efficient necessarily way to do the power line. They could have looked at co-conductoring, and I think that the fact that they haven't even looked at alternatives has been, except for an alternative route through the same place, just moving around a little bit, I think has been unbelievable that the Public Service Commission has not required them to look at a different path. And the path could be co-conductoring over existing power lines. They have not even looked into that at all. So there was a case in Southern Maryland a number of years ago where that's what they ended up doing. is co-conducting, I think it was Dominion, I'm not positive, Energy in Southern Maryland, and they ended up, everyone was fine, and that has not been pushed or talked about by the press or by anyone. At the beginning, there was a little bit of talk about it, but it's sort of that discussion has gone away, and to me, you have to have an alternative. There has to be a path to get there, and there are paths that have not been explored that are already existing that should have been the first way that they looked. So I agree with this, but I think we got to include a broader message, and that should be one of them, and that will hit everybody. Your rates will go up more because of what they're doing here, and it's not even possibly the best solution. They still have to acquire property from everybody. They have a long way to go.
Commissioner, thank you for that, and I'm in agreement, and I think that would fall perfectly under public relations, making sure people know what's involved in this and what the cost is going to be, so I'm with you completely. So I would like to make the motion then, formally, to add $100,000 to the budget for an anti-MPRP fund.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. And then the second thing I'll bring up, and then I'll kick it over to Commissioner Gordon, because I know you have something. So my second request is for a Union Bridge wastewater treatment facility expansion. So as everybody knows, Union Bridge is one of our more impoverished communities, and they've been trying for years to upgrade their wastewater treatment facility. And they recently voted, because they had the funding to replace the wastewater treatment facility and to implement I&I, or inflow and infiltration. They also voted to advance the first section of the first phase of the Jackson Ridge development, which is 73 houses. And their potential as Union Bridge for growth is limited because their funds are limited. Their citizens cannot afford rate increases or tax increases for an expansion, but at the same time, they also have to do some building. Otherwise, they're going to continue to be in some fiscal difficulties. So in order for them to replace the wastewater treatment facility that they currently have, they've picked up funding from other sources. But again, they need more not just to rebuild the facility, but to actually expand the facility. And so my request, as I've brought up before, would be a $5 million standing loan from the county. Obviously, the terms of the loan, et cetera, are going to have to be decided. But basically, what this would be, we'd be setting aside $5 million for Union Bridge from which they could draw upon as needed. It would allow Union Bridge to proceed with the expansion, and the expansion itself is going to take a couple of years. And the idea is that through the course of that time, and I know Commissioner Krebs has been a strong proponent of this, we use that time to find additional funding to supplant the $5 million that we're setting aside, which means that would be lowering the amount that Union Bridge would technically owe the county, but it would also be freeing up that money that we've set aside as the county for other uses. It's going to be a mutually beneficial enterprise, in my estimation. You're going to be talking about new houses, affordable houses. The taxable population is going to increase. You're going to be looking at some very controlled, measured growth, potential economic growth. And ultimately, Union Bridge would have to vote to agree to take us on with this loan. And of course, if that passes today, I would have to make that presentation. I'm more than happy and willing to make that presentation before the Union Bridge Council for their acceptance and ratification of it. But I think this is a potential mutually beneficial option that we can pursue. And again, as we uncover and secure additional funding, that $5 million that we're setting aside can be freed up for use elsewhere at the county level. So my motion is to create a $5 million standing loan fund for the Union Bridge wastewater treatment facility expansion.
Okay, just a couple thoughts before you act. Now, this won't actually be a budget impact. We talk about a lot about unassigned fund balance, but there are other categories in fund balance, and this is where that would show up. You would be saying, here's $5 million that's earmarked for this purpose. And then you've heard this in connection with other things, but to the extent that they do take some of the loan, we will have the money committed for the loan, and we will also have to commit money in fund balance equal to whatever they have borrowed until that money is paid back.
Right. And of course, the idea being that as we secure alternative funding, that loan eliminates itself, so to speak. So my motion is for the $5 million standing loan fund for the Union Bridge wastewater treatment facility expansion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion?
I just have a comment. I support, I've been trying to help Union Bridge for a year, and it's a challenge. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? And they've done a lot of work on this, and it's a big jump. and I do support helping them. There are resources out there we've been trying to work with the legislature on that unfortunately did not get about the Chesapeake Bay Restoration Fund. When it was put in place years ago, the Chesapeake Bay Restoration Fund, which people call the flush tax, it was put in place in like 2003 or 4 under the Ehrlich administration to clean up the bay. It was a good idea, and it helped first the large load users to clean up theirs, upgrade their wastewater treatment plants, and then it went down to the smallest. Back then, and this is how things changed, back then, nobody wanted any growth. Glenn Denning administration had come in, they wanted not to grow. So they put in the law that you couldn't use the Chesapeake Bay Restoration Fund for expansion to grow. You could only use it for upgrading, making the water cleaner coming out. I think we've done a very good job in our county, our towns, and us upgrading our facilities. There's still some jurisdictions, one is Baltimore City, that's been 20-some years, and they just asked for a 10-year extension because their wastewater treatment plant has not been upgraded. So it's interesting how some can go 30 years and not upgrade, and we're trying to do it. But Union Bridge needs this project desperately. But that's the history of it, and what has to happen, we believe, is that we've got to change the law, and it didn't really come to my attention until I realized that they actually get less money if they expand for the upgrade than if they don't expand. So there's actually a negative incentive to expand. And right now, this governor has a mandate to build houses. So we've got policy that are conflicting within our own state, our state departments. I don't think they realized this until we brought it to their attention. It just doesn't make sense to actually get less for the upgrade. And so that's the dilemma that Union Bridge is in. So it was brought to their attention. Government works slow. We do believe they believe they need a change in the law to allow for the expansion. These are market rate houses, which means they will be, the word affordable is in the eyes of the beholder, but they will be entry-level houses, which is good. If they expand, it will help the town. So there's a lot of reasons to do it. But I still think we need to pursue with the state to allow the money that we're all paying in from the flush tax, the Chesapeake Bay Restoration Fund, to go for expansions in areas that do want to grow with it and build homes, which is something that we all believe is important. So I think that could and would occur. We need to keep that conversation up. Department of Planning is working on it. The governor's office knows about it. They didn't realize it either. I didn't realize it. I never thought about it until I looked at the numbers and said, this doesn't make any sense, what they're doing. So they worked very hard. The plant is 65 years old, and I support what we're trying to do, but we should try to get the money to come from the pots of money that we're all actually paying in for our on our water and utility bills. But after you do this, I'd like to make another motion. When I look at the storage rate, we had the rate increases that were proposed and accepted. I voted against it, but a couple weeks ago.
Well, Commissioner, before we get...
I just want to make a point. I just want, while you were saying this, I want to make a motion about this afterwards. I support what you're doing. But right now, Mount Airy and Union Bridge have the lowest storage rates in the county, and I know Mount Airy's getting ready to go up, and there's others that are paying 3 to 4 times as much for storage. And after you're finished, I'd like to make a motion that we look at all of these rates and how do we figure out, because they're very different between towns and the county, and then these big upgrades need to be done, and how can we look at this more comprehensively? But for Union Bridge, I will continue to work to try to get this changed for them so that we don't have to tap into our money and our resources. It should come out of the fees that we all have paid, and but I feel for them they need some support and some help. And this would be a backstop so they could move forward.
Backstop's a good word for it. Thank you very much for that, Commissioner. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Commissioner Krebs, your motion for a work group, I think?
Yes, and I wanted to mention, this was all sent to you a couple weeks ago. Thank you, Ms. Wyndham. The water and sewer rate comparison chart, as I mentioned a few weeks ago when I voted against raising the rates because I thought that we needed to spend a little more time on them. Water and sewer rate, we're trying to keep housing affordable, but electric rates are going up and water and sewer rates are going up. And we always say it's because we've got to take care of the water plants, but they're very different across the county for many different reasons. And there is money out there, but it takes time and strategy to tap into some of the resources. So I know that our delegation in Annapolis, myself included when I was there, worked very hard to get extra money for some of these towns. For instance, New Windsor, they still have high total rates, but we've gotten them a lot of money over the years because they're a small town to upgrade their water and wastewater treatment plants. So I know this year, Senator Reedy got a large sum of money for the town of Manchester to upgrade their wastewater treatment plant, and I know Mayor Nevin was able to secure a large amount of funding for his town for water upgrade because of the PFAS. I think it was $18 million from federal money. It takes work to get these dollars, but I believe that Senator Reedy got $23 million, I think, for Manchester. Don't quote me on that, but a large sum of money. So it takes some effort, but I'd like, as a county, us to look at all of the towns, especially the unincorporated areas, which are, somebody mentioned the other day, Pleasant Valley. I didn't realize they were on the county water, but I'd like to look at what we do in the county and then maybe pull the towns in and say, you know, what are the needs? How are we with our upgrades? What money are we going after to state and federal money to bring the costs down when we do these upgrades? Because every time that we upgrade the water or upgrade, it's a cost involved, and we can, some wait forever and it keeps the costs low. I'm not saying it's the best thing to do, but others upgrade everything. The Maryland Environmental Services takes care of the rest of the county. I think Hampstead Water, you now said Pleasant Valley, I don't know what other parts of the county are on our county water, but our rates are going up tremendously, and our average usage and an average rate is almost $400 a quarter, which is a lot for water. In Baltimore County, they pay like less than $100. They pay like $15, $20 for water. So, and I'm not sure why, but I would like to have a work group on this, include representatives from the town, maybe even invite the delegation in for a meeting or two to find out what the opportunities are with state funding, and make sure that we're going after all of the resources and help the towns go after. Some are very good at it. Some, it's a new thing because they haven't done it in their lifetime. And I think we should help partner with, we could even bring the state in and say, how do we facilitate making these rates, helping our people be able to afford water and sewer rates at the same time as electricity is going up. So that's my goal. That Westminster, you look at their rates. I'm looking at sewage particularly, but they have done a very good job on water reuse. Their sewage rates are low, and that's good. And you know, what are they doing different? Is there something we could look to for them? But right now, and I know Marinari's getting ready to have a big increase, but they have the lowest sewer rate by far than anybody else, and maybe they've just waited, but they've done something right for a while. But they're all over the place.
All good questions for the work group.
So I'm just putting it out there so that whoever's listening can put together a proposal. So I'm not sure how you want to do this, but I move that we put together a county work group, including our municipalities, and to look at mostly what we control, which is Carroll County water rates, but to look at it in totality and see what resources we can tap into to do these upgrades, and just looking at the rates and how we come up with the rates and what goes into that. And the work group would include county commissioners. I'd be very happy to participate since my district is affected. And I'd like to have some of this done sooner than later. I don't want it to take a year, but sometime by the end of the year, have a report due to us so we can consider it before the next legislative, maybe even November, before the next legislative session. And we can put in for some, maybe some help for some of these areas that have high water rates. So my motion is to form a work group, and I'm not sure, I guess the water department here would be, I would like you to come back to us with a proposal of what that would look like, and who would chair it, who would be involved, and then we can vote on the actual work group and what it would look like, and what the goals and objectives for the work group would be.
So then your motion is to
Ask them.
create, or ask staff to create a work group.
Well, I'm asking CF to come back with a proposal in the next few weeks of what the work group would look like. And then we can look at it and see who's involved, make sure that we got the right people involved. So my motion right now is to ask you to come back with a proposal for a work group that we would have. And we would make sure the goals and objectives are in there, or what the work group is going to be looking at, and include municipal folks and county delegation and maybe some state folks. But what would it look like, whoever's out there that does these water rates? And give us a proposal on timeline, what they think is reasonable and feasible, and for a work group.
All right, so we have a motion for a work group for water and sewer rate study. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion?
And I think that work group needs to look at the individual jurisdictions' tax rates too. You know, if you live in Westminster, you almost pay that much tax to them that you pay to us. And do they have revenue funds, or are the water and sewers separate? Because if I'm paying double taxes and get a slightly cheaper water sewer bill, I don't know that I'm real excited.
And that'd be great. I mean, those kind of questions we should put in there. I believe that the towns all have enterprise funds just like we do. I don't believe it comes out of their general fund, but that would be good to know because they are enterprise funds. So it shouldn't be coming out of their tax rates, but that would be a good question to have is where does it come from?
Absolutely. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner Gordon, I believe you may have had something?
Yes, I have one thing I wanted to bring up today. As we all know, the state has been affecting a lot of our funding in a variety of areas over the past several years very significantly. And one area which Carroll County does a fantastic job, and we've done this for a long time, is our ag preservation in this county. We're the most successful in the state, and we're in the top, I believe, 5, if not higher, in the nation. Obviously, this is not just for preserving open land, which is very significant and important as we're fighting power lines and data centers, but it's also important for the business community, given agriculture being one of our large industries in the community. As we all know, over time, we are contending with that funding being limited. It was limited last year in what the state was allocating, and we have a number of significant properties that are continually coming up over the course of the next year or so. We're also dealing with continued market changes, as we know, not just with housing, but also with agriculture. Price points are going up significantly on these types of properties. And what I would like to do is I'm going to make a motion that we would allocate $3 million in one-time funding for ag preservation to be utilized, and that specifically this additional funding would be dedicated exclusively to the preservation of farms determined to be of a significant size and strategic location, which would be consistent with the agricultural program we have in place. And obviously, as county commissioners, we have involvement in those discussions, but specifically for those types of properties, and that's my motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Is there any other discussion?
Do you feel like we need to define what significant larger projects are, or the Ag Pres board and JP and them can take care of that?
I think we could, but I think I'd rather leave it to the
We're
folks that.
tying their hands
Yeah, I
if
don't,
we
I
do
don't
too much.
particularly want to tie their hands. I mean, obviously, on the smaller side, we do specify, and they have those in place. Obviously, you know, for me, I don't know what's significant, you know, and you make a valid point. What
know.
is significant? But I think we want to be looking at those larger properties, be they 100, 200 acres,
Yeah.
150, that kind of thing. But I think we should leave it up to them.
And I don't know if the public realizes this, we get to approve them even pursuing one.
Yes.
And then we get to approve it when it really happens. So we have the opportunity
Absolutely.
to rein this in if we have to.
Absolutely.
So, okay, good.
And I'm going to agree with Mr. Kyler on this. I think we should be looking at, we have we're what, 82,000 acres out of a 100,000 goal. And I think the last 18,000, we need to make sure that they're strategically placed. And I would like to see us, because as they come in, it's hard for them to say no to something because something else may come up better later in the year. And I think we should strategically be adding and utilizing the dollars in the best way and adding as much as possible to contiguous acres and looking at the kinds of soils that were, the most productive soils. And it seems, just since I've been here, it seems like it's a little more of a scattered approach, like as they come in. I don't necessarily see like there's 10 and we pick the top 2. So I think it would be good for us to give some direction over the strategy on these last, not just on this money, but on the last 18,000 acres. You know, where is it the best place to do it? How do we evaluate it that way? If things are being evaluated as they come in, it's sort of hard to look at them and say, here's 10 in a pot, and we're going to look at them. They sort of, so I think it would be prudent for us to prioritize the last 18,000 acres in general. and sit down and say, how are they looking at them versus just as they come in? And I know we have a line of demarcation of where we'd like to see some of these projects, but I think it would be good for us to give some direction for the rest of the money, including, this one-time funding, to see where there are key pieces that would help fill the puzzle pieces, and ask that we do look at that are, ranking with soils, locations. I mean, because quality of the ag preservation is actually more important than the quantity, because some of these, maybe they don't have good soils, they're not producing a lot. So I think it would be good to have a way that they're ranking them, and I think they do now, but as we do these last 18,000 acres, and have our ag staff define the program. What is it that we're looking for in these last 18,000 strategically placed acres? Because after that, we've met the goal. So I think it's a good time, adding resources to it to be looking at that and what are the benefits continuing of the program.
No, I agree with you. I mean, there is a process, as you mentioned, the ranking. So they do look at soil quality. That is a big component because, to your point, obviously having 100 acres is nice, but 100 acres in quality soil is going to be much more significant than just being 100 acres in, say, less significant available land. And I do think, this has been a long-standing program. It's done a great job in accomplishing its goals. And it's been, very consistent, which has been part of what the success is. There has been a period of time where there was a big influx of smaller properties. But to anyone's point, and I'm not criticizing, when you've got a limited basis of money, whether it's a program or it's us as individuals, how do you spend that money? If I can go out and buy 10 little things versus one great thing, I'm missing out in the end of the day. I do think, and I agree with you completely, one of the things I would like to see us do, and I'm not making a motion about this additional piece, but I think we need to ask ourselves, and I think we need to at least sit down formally at some point with AgPres and ask that last 18,000, where do we want it? How do we want to define that? Because there are strategic areas in our communities that we don't want to lock up in ag preservation. That doesn't mean we don't want it to be ag. That's, this is a voluntary program. It's open to the public to make that decision on their own. You can, obviously farm a property, whether it's an ag pres or not. But I think we need to, it's incumbent on us to make sure that we do not put it in places that may cause us greater harm in other areas as we move forward.
Yes, and what you mentioned, I think one of the things we've learned over time is that sometimes in the past that they've sort of surrounded some of our towns, our growing areas, with ag pres, and now they can't grow. And then along some of our commercial corridors or some of our highways that someday, I'm looking 10, 20 years from now, maybe I won't be here, but I don't want somebody to say, what did they do? We can't put anything here anymore. So I do think it's important, and I think we have a plan. I don't know. I'd like to revisit that for this last, if you would add that to your motion, just to more strategically ensure that the people know when they apply that certain ones are not going to, if they're around a town that is a growth area or could be a growth area, that would not be a priority, and also along commercial corridors or corridors that or highways where we should be having maybe some of our future places to grow past our time here.
So, Commissioner, if I may just to address that point, having served at on a municipal government for 9 years, individual property owners that were not part of our town's designated growth area, have the voluntary capacity and have in the past asked to become part of that preservation area. And we've also had areas that were part of the preservation program that asked to be let out of the program and paid back to get out of the program. So I don't want to too tightly constrict what might or might not happen around a town, because all of the experience that I've had with it so far has been that there were some guidelines about it, but then it comes down to the individual property owners of the municipality. Yeah, we're happy to let this guy hop out of ag pres, and we're happy to take this guy in. So I don't want to.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Commissioner, but I do want to make a point, because I know this is an open public meeting, and I don't want anybody to get confused in the facts. You cannot remove a property from ag preservation in Carroll County. Once it's placed in the program, it is extinguished. And I know I've had people over the years question, well, can I buy it back and pay interest? No, in Carroll County, it is extinguished, period, end of story. There are other counties in which you can, in some cases, get your property out of ag pres. There was a family, I believe it was about 10 years ago, that wanted to do that. The challenge for them was in that county, their regulations stated that the property had to be fundamentally not functional for usage. So what is that, a brownfield? I mean, you know, and who would want to have a property that you wanted to sell that you could not utilize for anything? But I just wanted to
I
mention
apolo-
that, just to caution you on that. I didn't want to give the public the
No,
wrong
no, I
impression.
apologize.
I know you didn't, I know.
No, you're correct, and I misspoke because I meant to talk about the designated growth areas. So I do
I know.
apologize for
No,
that.
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, absolutely. But again, I don't want to too tightly constrict the municipalities or the surrounding property owners with what they can or can't do, especially because, again, the designated growth area may grow or it may constrict, be as the case may be. So.
And keep in mind, we're not just restricting anybody from keeping their farm and ag ever. But this is a government program strategically that the taxpayers are paying for to keep things, and we got to make sure we manage it. If we manage things and don't have any plan for the future, we're not going to have anywhere to expand. And we're talking about wastewater treatment plants and the cost of them. One of the reasons things are very costly here is because we have small areas that have their own facilities. And when you have more facilities around it, it makes that go down. And some of our areas that we currently have are built out. We're going to have to move out somewhere. The question is where? I mean, 20 years from now, where will we be? And I think some people say, well, just don't do any more at all. I don't know that that's, so I think anybody can keep their land in agriculture forever on their own. But when the taxpayers are subsidizing it for a reason, there should be a strategic plan as to why we're doing it, why we're spending the money to keep it in preservation. And so they can, again, they can do whatever they want with their land forever and keep it in ag for generations. But this is about us spending money for a plan that has a reason. And we got to make sure that that reason is still in place, and we're evaluating the properties based on that.
Understood. And again, I apologize for my
No, no.
misspeaking. So.
I just wanted to make sure we were correct on the record.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner Guerin, did you have something?
I do have one brief thing. I think it's germane to the budget because, and we have had some public comment regarding this, but the Board of County Commissioners took an unprecedented step in securing $5 million for what we're describing as park restoration throughout Carroll County for the purpose of rec and parks. That's something no previous board's ever done. We're taking this issue seriously. There has been some public comment and some concern about how this money will be used and who will make those decisions. I feel as though the board has been fairly straightforward with the fact that we are going to establish a work session. We are going to learn more of what the challenges are. I'm going to go a step further to, and this has have to be a motion, then we'll make a motion, that coming out of that work session, we will utilize the good people that work within the Rec and Parks Advisory Council to create a committee of sorts with Rec Council representation to then go out and take a look at what some of the best uses for this money will be. So no one Rec Council feels like they were left out, and nobody who cares deeply about this issue, and there are a lot of people that do, hundreds of volunteers and thousands of parents, that they don't have to feel as though they may not have a say in what takes place. So I want to allay those fears a little bit. If it's a motion, then I can do that. I think this board has been fairly, again, straightforward about the fact that, you know, there is no blank check when it comes to budgets, and this certainly isn't one for Rec and Parks. We're going to have a work session. We're going to learn more about the problem. I know some projects and studies have already taken place with field and gym space. The Board of County Commissioners, I'm no expert on it. We'll learn more about what some of these challenges are. And then we'll set up a committee of people who work within Rec and Parks. I mean, they've almost devoted their entire lives to these rec councils and making sure these kids have places to play and practice. And then move forward there with this $5 million about how it's going to be spent, if it all is even spent. I don't know if a motion's necessary, I can do that, but I wanted to get feedback from the other 5 commissioners, because I think we've been pretty straightforward about how this money is going to be spent, and it's not going to be spent until we figure out the best places for it and where we can make the biggest impact on these particular fields in question. So any further, do we feel like we need to do a motion?
I don't know if you need a motion, but I think the discussion's good because there are a lot of concerns. I've been involved with rec council since the early 70s. We have so many volunteers that do so much. We've aggravated them with tax exempt statuses, risk management discussions, and if we don't do this correctly, we lose volunteers. We can't afford to do what the volunteers do in this Carroll County. And you know, you look at the self-help projects, you look at the capital projects, the advisory board, but then, and Roberta, what's the Friends group called? Friends of, you know what I mean?
Well, there's quite a few, I think.
But rec councils meet once a month and talk about all this, and we should include them in this too, and the individual rec councils, because, like you say, a lot of them, they've been involved. It's funny, names pop up, and we have people in here that I was on the advisory board with, and I remember, pick something, equestrian, they were doing while we were doing something. So, yeah. We need to include the right people and not, if we don't want to turn off our volunteers.
Yeah. So pursuant to that discussion, then, I think I will make a motion. My motion is that the Board of County Commissioners, upon approval of this $5 million for budget restoration, will convene a work session, as we've already decided, to just, again, establish what the challenges are and the needs are, and then pursuant to that, create a countywide committee or work group with rec council and advisory personnel and representatives from rec councils to further study the issue and determine how this money is going to be spent. I mean, I don't know any other better way to phrase it.
Second.
Before you act on that, the very end of what you just said could sound like you're giving the authority to make these decisions to the people that you're going to involve.
Certainly don't want to, that certainly wasn't my intent.
Okay, so I just wanted to make
They'll
sure.
make recommendations.
Do we want to call them an advisory board?
Yep, I think it'd be good to somehow make it clear that,
Do you mind?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'll amend that motion that this group will be established to make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to see,
Other
I think,
thing- oh,
okay.
sorry.
I think it's a great idea, what you're doing. You first said we're going to have a work group with, and I think with us, like a work session with us. I would suggest that at that work session, that we all come up with an idea of how this work group would look. You know, who would be involved? I'd like to see all the rec councils, I don't even know how many there are, all, you know, involved in some way. And then we all have our own vision of what Rec and Parks is. It's a lot more than just, you know, the ball fields outside. So I think we might need to say, okay, this is about outside facilities, this might be about inside facilities, this might be about some of the extra programs. It's a very large amount of things, and I sometimes forget that. So some of this is about space, and some is internal space, some is external space. So when we do our work group, I think we should try to focus and don't be so broad that they're bringing up basket weaving at the same time. And I'm making that up. I like basket weaving. But, you know, we'll have a work group on outside field space, and then we'll talk about inside space, because that's a little different, because it's more limited. And then there's extra programs. So we don't want to make this so broad that we're talking about 50 different things at the same time. But if we have our work session first, we call it a work group, our work session with us, we can better explain what we'd like the certain work group to do. And it might be a series of, this one's about outside ball fields, and then there might be a different group that does, you know, facilities, inside facilities, and one that does extra programming. Where else could we hold those programs? So I would suggest that we put the details in and think about it before our own work session. And I know we have 5 million in there. I'd like to understand the and bring this up at the work session, the relationship of what is the baseline of what Rec and Parks, us, the county, provides to all rec councils. I know we have self-help money in there. It's minutia. It's $138,000, I think, for for all the rec councils, which is, they spend way more than that, and they're putting it into their fees. And then I don't understand the relationship of how we handle the Carroll County Sports Complex, because we seem to have staff there and we take care of all of their needs. And I know we just put a vehicle in there for them to take care of their needs. But yet, at the local rec councils, they raise all that money for those things. So I'd like to, before we even move forward with the Carroll County Sports Complex, things that we have allocated to them, that money sort of be on the table as well, just so we can look at everything in its totality for, that would be for outside. How do we treat all the entities, the adult entities versus the youth-supported entities? And then how do we ask for money for them? And how do we make sure it's equitable and expected and fairly distributed? So if we could, these are all good ideas, but we could bring up some more specifics at our work group with the intention of establishing this work group within Rec and Parks plan with all the rec councils included, but then give them a certain focus. So if it's so broad, we're not going to, it might take different groups.
And again, that's why I'm comfortable with my motion. The sole purpose of it is to address those concerns within rec councils across the county, because none of us want them to feel as though this money is going to go out the door without a very thoughtful process of recommendations for us to move forward with it. That was solely the goal of my motion. It's uncharted territory for the Board of County Commissioners. There's going to be a lot of work to do. Nobody said it was going to be easy, but that's exactly what I think we're going to try to accomplish, and which is why we've got this motion before us, so we can make
And,
sure.
I wanted to make a comment, and I'll make that, and then maybe a correction. There's also many businesses in Carroll County. And I know contractors that roll 20 fields every year. I know contractors that, and the outdoor is so much more than ball fields. It's buildings, it's walking paths, it's a lot of stuff. And we had a contractor recently, we needed to move a shed, and they needed to grade and stone and whatever, and they did it, said how much, and they go, we can't bill you for that. You know, it's so many businesses doing it. And then I don't know where the 138,000 came from. Between Project Open Space, individual rec councils, they've done millions. I don't know what Project Open Space would add up over the advisory council has given projects to rec councils, but it's not hundreds of thousands, it's millions. And a lot of that is done on school property, therefore the joint use agreement with them. And it's a lot of pieces to this, and we do need to better understand it. Good motion.
All right, so we have a
I
motion.
got a question. I just want to clarify. I mean, I might be missing something. Can you show me in the budget where the money is for the rec councils to apply for self-help grants?
Yeah, I
You're
think-
talking just self-help is like this much of what the money Rec and Parks gives to rec councils.
No, but that's the money that they're able to apply for. The rest of the money sort of is given, I'm not sure how the Project Open Space.
They can apply for capital projects, they can apply for all of it. I've been there, done that.
Yeah, and we get those
And
reports.
you're making the point, we need to better understand it,
Yeah,
obviously.
It's page 122, but that is a lengthy process that we actually get their recommendations before they're even implemented. And I think 9 times out of 10, we concur because they know best.
No, and maybe that's
gotta-
that's
yep.
part of the problem is they don't know. It's hard to apply for Project Open Space money when you don't have a project to do or a place to do it. So that Project Open Space money would be also, something I suggest we come to our work group with, how does that work? How does a rec council know? What's the level? They're busy running the programs and taking care of all these other things. And what is their responsibility? Is it finding sites? Is it finding sites so that they can request Project Open Space? Or is that something that our rec department should be looking at equally?
So if I may, Ted, I apologize. I don't want to get too far off the track of the motion here. So I think maybe if we have specifics that we would want this or advisory group to look at, we should compile those so when we come to our work session, before we establish that group, we're able to discuss. So I don't think today is particularly the day to talk about the specifics, but I think it's a good idea when we
about
get to our work session on it. So with that said, we do have a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's see. Commissioner Collier, did you have anything that you wanted to?
Well, I have something I want to mention, and and I promised somebody yesterday I would. We all get calls, emails, et cetera, for different tax breaks. This one was seniors. Well, Junior Fisher last weekend said, I'm 100. Why do I have to still pay property tax? And that's a pretty small segment of the population, 100 and over. I got a call yesterday. He said 70 and over, 75, 65. It changed back and forth. But one of the points I've made to these people, and I don't know whether we should get budget to look into it. You hear about veterans tax breaks, senior tax breaks, different people's tax breaks. In my opinion, unfortunately, if I only have to pay half the taxes because I'm old, somebody else has to pay the other half. And I looked at, and we talked about that with a couple different people. It doesn't matter if they build a new school in Manchester, the taxpayers of Carroll County pay for that. Not just, it's not a Manchester issue, it's a county issue. So I wanted to mention, should we look at tax breaks for people? And then while I'm mentioning that, I'd like to also comment, this budget cycle, we have thrown more money than a lot of years into the budget for different projects, and hopefully they're all meaningful projects. But I don't want to see us 3 years from now have to raise a tax rate because we've been too frivolous with money. And so that's one of the things with, some people think we should reduce the tax rate. It hasn't been raised since 1997. That's pretty long, and it's been reduced 3 times during that period. You know, and we don't control assessments, even though, Ted, we pay for them now, I think, but we don't control them and can't control them, and people can come in and appeal those. But it's a tough thing, and I told the last gentleman, I'll bring it up, but my personal opinion is if we give a tax break, somebody else has to pay for that. I think we're pretty slim on services. We just talked about rec and parks, and you know, we could double their budget and still not probably give them enough. EMS, that's up to 35 million now. We've divvied out some to other departments in the budget, but and I think it's great that we're doing that, but it all costs money. So I wanted to mention senior tax breaks, veterans tax breaks. Should we evaluate that, or do we think our tax rate has stayed pretty low? We're doing all we can do.
Well, so I certainly understand the impetus and the thought process behind it, and I certainly understand everything that laid out. I mean, if for no other reason than to better understand what it might look like for us fiscally, I have no problem, I mean, obviously not, you know, tomorrow or something, but
Yeah.
soon, having staff look at, to see what the numbers would come out, what it would look like. So it would give us a better area of substance from which to approach the discussion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's all I wanted to do was bring it
Okay.
up for everybody.
And I'm going to, a couple things. I want to, I think I say this every single year that I met with the commissioners for many, 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 many years. And there were some that would always say that tax rate has not been raised. That is absolutely true, and it has been lowered. However, the money that we collect from the taxpayers has gone up every year because your assessments go up. So I don't think in any of those years that the tax rate is not changed, or even when it was lowered, that we brought in less tax revenue than the year before from the individuals. And you can, Ted, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because the assessments continue to go up. No matter if you ever, as I said before, my assessment went up 41% in the last cycle, which means we have a cap of 5%. It will go up 5% a year for the next 8 years. So they are going up, and they're going up the average of 5% a year in Carroll County, and have been because of assessments increasing. So if we change the rate, my gosh, people would put us out of office if you change the rate, because then they'd go up 100%, or could. So the rate is not the constant yield. Your property tax assessments, now, if we stop having growth in values of our properties, then we could bring in less from the year before. But that has not happened in a very long time. I can't remember it happening. Could happen on an individual basis, but overall, we are bringing in tremendously, at least 5%, I think, total on that column of property tax. I think it's higher than that because on commercial properties and rental properties, there is no cap. So I think we're actually bringing in, it'd be nice to know the total increase of our property tax income each year, so we can see, and I think it's over 5%, I think it's like 5.7 or 6% because of the commercial stuff being phased in all at the same time. One of the things we could talk about for the older folks, if we wanted to, is to even cap their rate of increase, so it's flat. Because as everybody knows, I've mentioned senior citizens are getting 2.3% or less, 2.2 last year on their Social Security. So they're not getting the increases, and some people are on a very limited income, so, and their assessments are going up 5% a year, which I think is too high. I think it should be less, but I didn't get any support for that. But if we would consider lowering freezing them at a certain, 90 years old, 100 years old, at least they would be able to stay in their homes, because that piece would not be going up. And that is, you don't get your value out of your house till you sell it, but it's the only thing you do that you keep paying more on the value, and you're not going to sell it. Like if you buy a stock, you don't pay it until you sell the stock. You don't pay it until you get the gain and you actually make the transaction. On your home, you're paying it all along on that increase. And maybe you have a lot of value in it, but you want to live there, and you can't really get the money out. So it's a little different than any other asset that you own that you don't have to pay your tax. Even if it's a rental property and it goes up, you're paying your actual assessment, but you're actually raising your income. Seniors do not have a chance when their Social Security, I said Medicare before, your Social Security, they don't have any control over what that is. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to at some point talk about the caps and how much stuff is going up, especially for certain age groups if we choose. I agree with you that if you take one from one, others are paying it. And some people are of means that might be older, and some people may not be of means. And we do have the senior tax credit right now that I think you can put in for. Is that true on property tax if you have a certain income? Is that just income tax?
Yes, the county does have a senior property tax increase. Put it together probably 20 years ago now. But what happened at the time was the state had an existing program which they improved about the same time that we were looking at one that made the county one largely irrelevant. But there is one in place. And it's important for people to know that the state has it in place. And on property tax revenue, you're mostly right, but we did actually have, I think, 3 years after the house market crash, where we actually did collect less property tax revenue than in the previous year.
And that's my concern currently with these big increases that we're spending a lot of the money based on these increases, and if it slows down and we get zero increases, we'll get something, but that is a concern. So you mentioned that we have a property tax bill for seniors, state and county. If they apply for the state one, do they get it for the county as well?
I think it's one or the other. I haven't thought about this in many years, but as I recall, when the state improved theirs, they got that benefit, and it made the county one unnecessary.
So maybe we should take a look at some point at what we have in place currently at the state level and the county level, because I haven't looked at it in years either, and see what exactly it means, how many people take advantage of it. Is it enough? Can we do something different? I think it's not a bad idea to revisit it, especially for seniors. And what is a senior? Is it at a certain age? Just looking at the policy, the state and the county policy. Do you have any agreement on that?
Yeah, I'd certainly look at
Three
the-
people. Okay, I make a motion that we have an update at one of our meetings on the senior property tax credit for the state and the county, so we can look at how that affects our budget.
All right, we have a motion for an informational update at one of our upcoming open sessions. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner Kyler. Thank you, Commissioner Krebs. And Commissioner Krebs, I believe you had one item you were interested in talking about?
Actually, I have two.
Oh, okay.
Okay, a couple here. We have a meeting this afternoon with our Transit Advisory Council. And on that council, I know they had a consultant come in. I don't sit on the council, I've been to a meeting or two, but they were talking about expanding services a little bit for on-demand specifically. And I think, one of our discussions months ago was, who do we want to be with transit in the county, and who do we want to provide that service to? I'm a big proponent of making sure our paratransit, which is for people that are disabled and elderly, they cannot drive, to make sure that that is robust, available throughout the county. So they did have this study done, the Transit Advisory Council, which is our organization that's supposed to advise us. They did a very good report about all these different options, that if we did this, this is what it would cost. And I forget when the report came out. March 9th. I'm not sure, I thought they voted on it, I haven't seen the minutes, but there were a bunch of options in here, but I didn't see anything in the budget about, and Ted, you can tell me if I'm wrong, is there anything included in the budget new for any of these options that were recommended? And what was the final proposal that came out of their priorities?
The board has not reacted in any way to that.
And that was discussed at the last transit meeting pretty extensively, and I think the result was, this was all discussed after the budget was already been submitted, and they talked about trying to incorporate it into future years, but they said they thought they were too late. And then the other thing they mentioned, the prior year's budgets, commissioners talked about cutting them severely with money, and they said, I think they were half afraid to ask for more money, and what we talked about in there is, I think the commissioners, I said, I can't speak for the other four, but our mindset's a little different now. We understand that we had COVID money and that affected the budget and all that, and we want to do more for the citizens within reason. And so I said, I think we would support them requesting funds to do things, but they felt like it was too late in the budget process to do it this year.
Well, they
And
could
I don't
certainly
know,
come back
Ted,
next
if
year.
you guys feel that way or not.
Well, they could certainly come back next year with a
Oh,
request.
and I strongly encourage that.
And I'm going to suggest that's why we're here. This is our first day of real deliberations in public, and we've just brought a bunch of other things up that are important. And they do have a meeting today, and I don't know, I see, there are costs in here for, I think one of the main, they did a survey around the county. I think one of the most important things that they wanted was a little bit of extra service in the morning and in the afternoon, so people could go to work or go to certain dialysis. There's certain time slots for dialysis, I guess, at the dialysis center, and that was important to some folks. So I think that they believe that there was a small amount that was approved to be asked for this year. And again, I don't know, I wasn't at the meeting, but I would hate to not at least move in the direction of asking for something. We have resources this year to, especially for paratransit. We had asked them to look at transit in general. Can we reallocate some money from ones that are underutilized routes, which I think has happened in the past, that they've gotten rid of underutilized routes, and ensured that we prioritize our paratransit, which is for folks that, again, elderly people, people that cannot drive, need to get to doctor's appointments. Maybe it's people that are disabled and cannot get to work because they cannot drive. And part of it was this time issue. So we have a meeting today, so I'd like to ask us to go back and see what their priority was out of here, and is there something small that we can do that's reasonable this year? Because they hired a consultant. They do it every so many years. I think they did a really good job of articulating what some of the needs would be and some of the costs. Some of them I'm not sure I understand about extra vehicles, but I'd hate to wait another whole year to do anything.
And I agree, and I don't know how, and I think you kind of described it. They want to do whatever, an hour earlier and 2 hours later, so it's the same vehicles, it's more gas and overtime for drivers, but how can we get an indication, if we had, pick something, 300,000 to their budget, can they pursue that and not wait a year? And what would happen if we come in here, do you have to reopen the budget if 2 months from now, we say we'd like to allocate 300,000 to them for overtime based on their study, can we do that?
Okay, yes, you could make a transfer from the reserve for contingencies. I just want to point out that when you say that they can do it, yeah, this is the county's system.
Oh,
This
I
would be
understand.
in Citizen Services budget. This is another case where Public Works, I'm sorry.
Yeah, public works.
It has been in Citizen Services while I've been here.
Yes.
This is another situation where you have people who are making recommendations or making requests,
Yeah.
but they don't actually get to decide how this is going to
Yeah,
run.
we have to decide, but I didn't know how much our hands are tied. We may hear today X amount of dollars. And when I'm saying they're the experts that I think can tell us if we had another 100 grand, we could do an hour more. We could, and then we need to decide if that's worth it.
Yes, you do have that flexibility, and that's really one of the big reasons why the reserve for contingencies exists, to allow you to try and do something like this. And just for people who are listening to this conversation, I just want to make the point that our transit system overwhelmingly serves disabled and senior citizens now.
Yes, and I think one of the things that they recommend in here, which I think is a great idea, is to better market, so folks know that this is available. I mean, my first meeting here, which was in September, I think, last year, it was brought to our attention that there was a need for folks to get to certain doctor's appointments, and they were having to get private transport. And I say private, some people are in wheelchairs, and they can't get transported, and then their spouses maybe can't handle that. So, I think the first day they talked about a person that's paying $200 a trip to go, to get to a doctor's visit. I also was looking at the amount of the fares, and I know nobody wants to raise fares, but I think we should be looking at some of this. The regular transit fare is like $1. They wanted to raise it to $2. I know people have different financial situations. I don't think that $1 is a lot, and I don't think $2 is a lot. They don't have vehicles. However, we charge the disabled $6 or $8. So we're charging, the fares are way more for people that are disabled than they are for, they had some new prices. They wanted to actually lower the fare on Trailblazers. I don't know who decides that, to 50 cents. I actually think that they should be paying a little more of their costs. If you look at the percentage of a fare box recovery for the regular transit versus the disabled transit, the fare box recovery for Trailblazer is 5%, which the dollar, and they wanted to raise it, I think I've got this right, they wanted to lower it to 50 cents, which would be, I guess, half of that. But then for the paratransit, for the people that need it, it is, I don't know, $6 or $8. So, and the fare box recovery was like 18%. So I think, I don't know who makes those final decisions, but I think that should be more level, because the people that are maybe on the regular transit, hopefully they're going to work and doing it instead of having a vehicle. And I think, I definitely would not reduce it to 50 cents, and I would go the opposite direction, but try to make that fare box recovery more equalized between
The board would approve rate changes. And I just want to make, again, for people who are listening, make clear, they could have taken from your comments here that we have a charge for disabled passengers and a charge for non-disabled passengers. There are different charges for fixed routes and for on-demand. There's nothing, some of the fixed routes are set up to handle wheelchairs. I mean, it's not that you're kept off of those from being disabled. And there's always been tension between this. The fixed routes provide limited service. If you're going from point A to point B, that works. But if you're doing something different, then you need the on-the-demand, and they do work differently. And I think you pointed out a little bit earlier, we have made changes to fixed routes. We're saying it doesn't make sense to continue doing this. And even when we do that, there's still somebody who's mad. There was one person who was using that fixed route. You took it away. Now they've been disadvantaged. But in the end, how much we charge, and boards of commissioners have always been reluctant to raise rates, but that it's in your hands to do it if you want, or to lower rates. Like some of the other things we've talked about, the decision isn't, do you want the rate to be higher or lower? It's who do you want to pay for the cost of providing the service?
And I think that's a good explanation. Yeah, the fixed routes are fully accessible. It's not, nobody's discriminating against disabled on fees. It's a matter if the regular route doesn't suit me and I want to be picked up at my house and delivered to wherever, then that's more expensive. But it has nothing to do with accessibility.
So if I
Wait,
might.
wait a minute, let me just finish this. So a fixed route to fully accessible, I think that's one of the things that did come up during the meetings that I was at. The fixed route, the actual vehicle might be accessible, but where they pick up and drop off are not accessible for folks that are blind and in a wheelchair because there's no sidewalks. So accessibility isn't just getting onto the bus. Accessibility is where the bus stops and starts and whether you can get on and off of it. So many people that are using the paratransit, we do have people that are seeing impaired, blind. We have people that are in wheelchairs or on a walker or a cane that need a flat surface. And many of the stops, they were saying, are not, we don't necessarily have a continuity of sidewalks. And the fixed routes are only in one area. There's no fixed routes. There's no fixed routes in the south anymore. So they have zero ability to get anywhere on a fixed route. So that's why this group, in Mount Airy, I don't think there's any fixed routes, and I don't think there's any fixed routes in Manchester.
Yes,
So-
there are actually.
Okay, all right, so there's fixed routes in Mount, but there's none in the southern part of the county. And some of it was because there wasn't ridership.
Yep.
And they were taken away a few years ago, and I'm not saying that we should bring them back, because they weren't used, and I'm sure the few people that used them missed them, but that was done, and I would rather put that money into the paratransit. But the fact that they're fully accessible, the bus might be accessible, but the actual drop-off location and to get to where you need to be is not necessarily accessible. So that.
Understood. I just wanted to make sure we weren't leaving an idea out there that there was one charge for disabled and one charge for
No,
non-disabled.
but what I was basically saying is the fare box recovery, which is the total amount of what it costs to run X, is much higher for the paratransit. I think it's 18%, and it's only 5% for the transit, for the regular, and maybe the costs are more for the paratransit, and that is why. But I'm not asking us to solve that problem here. But we do have a full report in front of us with recommendations, and I'd hate to wait till next year to move forward on some of the recommendations, or one or more, to expand the hours or whatever, and maybe that we can go through that this afternoon. There's a meeting at 3 o'clock with the Transit Advisory Council. I mean, one of them talks about multi-branded uniform drivers. I mean, that to me, for $22,000 to get new uniforms. If they want new uniforms in the future with the brand on it, I suggest that they change that. I'm not going to, I don't necessarily support replacing all the uniforms to put the extra brand on it. But those are the kinds of things that we should talk about. What are their priorities, and what would it cost to expand the demand response? They recommended expanding weekday hours for the demand response and the Trailblazer. You know, what if we just did it for demand response? And then, you know, what would it, they were talking about moving it from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. whereas right now I think it's 7 to 4 or 5, I don't remember. But they said this is one of the most frequently requested service improvements from the rider community surveys, and it would be nice to, 50% of this comes from FTA, the Federal Transportation Authority, and the Maryland Department of Transportation. It's not clear if additional funding is available for Carroll County. I would hope by now whoever wrote this would have found that out so that we would know if it's available for the
We're
additional.
very aware of what grant funding is available, and one of our problems is paying for this is becoming more and more about Carroll County because the grants are not growing.
And I'll disagree with you.
And you just said, we can bring this up in 2 months
Yes?
and make it all happen. So I don't know, it's 20 after 10.
And I think to your point, Commissioner Kyler, and Commissioner Krebs had brought up that there's a meeting this afternoon, maybe talk to them and see,
Yeah.
is there anything in the short term that we could implement or could include in the budget? So I appreciate the discussion, but I think that in and of itself is probably better left for that advisory committee this afternoon.
No, and I also want to suggest that we have these committees, and that's the purpose of them. They worked, the reason the committee almost folded last year and they couldn't get members is because they felt that when they did stuff, they weren't listened to or it wasn't addressed. And so we literally didn't have anybody coming to the meetings. We've tried to reformat it. I think we should reprioritize because things are going up that I think the Board of Commissioners maybe should reprioritize how we spend our transit money. But until we do that, they're just trying to take it off of the, work with what we have in place and just at least get some expanded hours for I'd say the paratransit. So I would suggest this afternoon we ask them to prioritize, but I think it's incumbent upon us when we put a committee in place and they spend money on a consultant and they spend a whole year working on a plan and they put it out, that we at least address something in the plan and move something forward. And then, what do we do? What direction do we give from this report into the future?
Well, I'm sure those will be brought up this afternoon. So, and Commissioner Krebs, I believe you had one other thing you wanted to bring up?
No, let me just make a motion that we put, after our meeting today, we will ask them to come up with a priority or two.
Well, I don't think that's not necessary.
Generally speaking, this is presented to the board. It's done every 5 years, so we're, so it's not like it was yesterday. But this presentation is made, I am virtually positive, that this presentation on this consultant report is made to the board, and then their recommendations are outlined. It just been 5 years since it was done last, so you may just want to wait. We can find out when that presentation is coming, and then because it sounds like there are a lot of really good recommendations, and you don't want to just give it short shrift without having a full conversation. So, and there is flexibility, later on to start some of those, implement those recommendations. So that would, if I may, just one way or another, whether they were intending to bring those recommendations to you or not, we will make sure that they do, and then you can address it at that point.
I'd like to make a motion to add the TAC report to a future agenda sometime in the next couple of months, and that we ask them today at the meeting to prioritize the recommendations that are in this report so that we will have something to go from. And I'd like them to come and, I'd like to see the members of the committee, the citizen members, come and give us the report so we can get straight
We
answers
need all
from
the
them.
committee to give
Yep,
us a
yep.
report,
Invite the
not just the ones you like.
No, I like them all, but
And
All right,
we
wait,
have-
but before-
We have a transit advisory committee, and they report to us, so I don't understand, again, now it's 22 after, what this motion even means.
what the motion means, I'll repeat it. The motion is a
I heard
present.
the motion, and we need to make
Commissioner,
a
before-
motion to tell you and I to talk to them?
Look,
I don't need that motion. I don't know if you do or not.
All right,
It's
before-
getting frustrated, I'm
I
sorry.
understand. Look, I
We just said
appreciate.
this doesn't, we need to move on with the budget.
I know, and so Commissioner Krebs, I think that your concerns have already been taken into consideration. That
I'm going to make a motion that we have a the only action that will require.
Commissioner Krebs, you've interrupted me several times now, and I've been incredibly kind and incredibly patient. All right, I'm trying to do my best to adjudicate this meeting. All right, you raised a number of concerns, and you asked for discussion to be brought up this afternoon. It's going to be brought up. So I'm not quite sure what else we're going for here.
I just made a motion that we have a presentation to add the TAC report to a future agenda item in the next couple of months, and to have the committee present their recommendations with their priorities to this board directly so that we can give them some feedback on their report that they get done every 5 years, since we have it in front of us. So that is my motion.
So a motion for the Transit Advisory Council to come back to us.
Add the TAC report to a future agenda. The TAC report is this report that we all have been received, that gets done every 5 years, and it was completed a few months ago, that we received. This TAC report would be added to a future agenda to be presented by the Transit Advisory Committee and the committee be invited to us as a board and with their priorities in there so that we can discuss them prior to next year if we can do something for them this year.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? All right, motion fails for lack of a second. Commissioner Krebs, I believe you had one other item you wanted to bring up?
Yep, I do. Okay. So I think this was sent out to you. We've had Carroll County Sheriff's Office, I'll give you a little history first. Years ago, we used to be, our primary law enforcement in Carroll County was the Maryland State Police, and then different sheriff's departments, different towns had their own police departments. And the Maryland State Police historically had a satellite office in the Eldersburg Library for years and years and years. And then I'm not sure of the timing of this, but then when we moved to the Sheriff's Department, being our primary law enforcement, we were no longer in the library because the library had outgrown them and pushed them out. And we eventually got a secondary space in a leased building that's not, it's somewhere on Route 26, it's not very visible. So over time, there has always been a request in the master plan for many, many years to have a satellite office, a permanent satellite office in Eldersburg, or the Freedom area, which is Eldersburg, Sykesville. And it's been pushed off for a number of years because it's costly to build a new building and put a new precinct or whatever in. So for whatever reasons, it has not occurred. So I was trying to find a more cost-effective way to solve the problem without building another $25 million building, which is what I think the cost had come out, either to add on to the library or to put it in a location nearby in a more visible spot. So trying to come up with a long-term solution to solve a problem for a lot less money, I came upon a possible leased space that is in Eldersburg Commons. And I always say, what's the problem we're trying to solve? I talked about, we used to have the space, and then we have a different space, and it's not visible, it's not convenient, it's very difficult to access, to turn out of that particular site. So most people don't even know that we have the satellite office there because it's not visible. So we've proposed a leased space for possibly a 10-year lease for a new location, which would be in the rear of Eldersburg Commons, which, for those that don't know, it's behind the Walmart, the Walmart and the Ulta. There's space in the rear with plenty of parking. The proposed new facility, let's see, we talked about what we could do with a new building, which I'm not trying to do that at all. This is more cost-effective, but Freedom is the largest growth area in the county that the sheriff's office actually patrols, and the current facility, as I said, has limited visibility and accessibility. So this proposed location would have to be, let's say, built out. It would have to be, it's raw space right now, it would have to be built out into office space and furnished, and you put the technology in. This location is the highest incident rate of calls. I don't know if it's in the area or the county, but they had 720 calls just to that shopping center in 2025, and so far this year they've had 280 calls. We think the physical presence of having the sheriffs just in and out of that site would deter some of those calls. This site would have better access. It has 2 traffic lights at West Hemlock and Ridge Road. The current location can only be accessed westbound. It's very, very dangerous there with no safe eastbound turn. The new location is more centralized with considerably more parking for the police and for people that might want to go into the office. And the larger space would be built out to the specifications that we've been working with the sheriff to figure out what that space would look like. And it would have areas for staff to write reports, take complaints, and could be used as a training site prior to their firearms training, which their firearms training site is in Marriottsville, and this would be a convenient place to
Firearm trainings, and
that what you call it?
they use our facility as well, yeah.
Okay, well, they were saying that this would be a good place for them to access that site. I don't know how often they use it. There's no holding cell in the current facility, nor will there be one in the new facility. There's no need to replace the interview room. So they've gone through a comprehensive look at what their needs would be, and they've come up with a one-time cost, and they think this is a high cost, but you never know. If it was done this year, for everything, including the build-outs of the spaces, the furniture, IT, phones, computers, the whole 9 yards, signage, They believe one-time costs would be no more than $2.6 million. And then the ongoing costs would be commensurate with the current lease space per square foot that they have now. And that is negotiable, so I'm not going to put those numbers out there because hopefully we can get a better price on the lease. But the actual square footage price is commensurate with what we have today. And our current space lease ends in April of 2027. Which would mean this would happen concurrently, that lease space obviously will probably increase in cost, but it would be a seamless transition to get rid of the lease space we have. There'd be no duplication of space. And I'm bringing this up. This is a long-time plan to fill a long-awaited need in our community, be a permanent solution and take off of the list of things to do is to build another facility. And the sheriff and his staff have been very cooperative and spent months trying to imagine this space for their long-term needs. They assure me that this would accommodate their long-term needs. So I think we sent out a spreadsheet with the, there were a couple of options. The option that we put is one-time money in the budget for the build-out, which would be in this fiscal year, and then there would be 2 or 3 months' worth of increased rent because it's a bigger space for the build-out of the sheriff's office. And then that would take care of this problem for my tenure and way past my tenure, we would hope. And if anybody needs a copy of, I don't know if you got this, there's a copy of the space. I think it was sent out to everybody, but we get a lot of things in our, there's one-time money, and then the very bottom line is the increase ongoing in the budget that would be for the, and that's without the negotiations for the space. This is just based on the current square footage. So I will make a motion, and if you want to have any questions, I move that we approve one-time cash use of the surplus of $2.65 million in FY27 for the build-out of the Carroll County Sheriff's Office leased space at the Eldersburg Commons, which will include fit-out, design, construction, IT infrastructure, furniture and fixtures, contingency, and inflation, and direct staff to negotiate a lease term within the budget guidelines.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I talked to the sheriff about this, and he said it wasn't urgent, and he didn't want to push it for this year. I don't know if his mind has changed because he got the raises or not, but that was his opinion very strongly then. They have an existing space. I think it's more visible. There are police cars parked there, so obviously that works. I think it had a cell. I don't know if it still has a holding cell or not. It's an adequate space. Again, I talked earlier about taxes and money we've added to the budget. This year, the cost would be 70 times more than what it would be if we stay at where we are. The monthly rate's over double and jumps to 2.5 times, and over 10 years we'll pay over 9, almost 10 times as the amount of money that if we use the existing space. I'd love to see this looked at, but I think we could find something more visible and more cost-effective.
Well, for me, this seems like a good cost endeavor. Unfortunately, it sounds like it's needed to increase presence because of all the activity that's occurring down in that part of the county. The simple allocation of the funds and allowing staff to look at the lease and the options for it just puts the money there for this possibility. It looks as though also that this particular building, which is behind the Walmart, I guess, may not be available forever if we don't jump on it. So I am supportive of this measure.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. All right, so I believe that was all that I was aware of that we had to discuss. So I guess at this point,
Oh,
really,
oh,
it is,
oh,
I'm sorry.
I didn't, like, tell you everything I was going to bring up, but I didn't know,
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't know we
Was there something else you wanted to?
Yeah, yes, please. There's two things, let me find them. I didn't know how this was going to work, if we were going to do capital, operating, let's see what this is. That, did that, did that. I have to find the amount here.
Oh,
Good.
while you're looking, just a point of order question. So this is a work session. We could not approve the budget today because it's a work session. Can we on Thursday in open session?
Yes.
So we could, if we get to that point, we could add a motion to Thursday and approve the budget and avoid having another open budget session. Now, the next open
You
budget.
don't have to have next Tuesday regardless.
Sorry?
If you don't feel you need next Tuesday, you don't have to have it.
Yes.
So you could do one of two things. You could either amend the agenda and add it to this Thursday's, or just wait till the 21st. But I'm sure the budget office would love to have
So
the
either
extra
way,
time.
we wouldn't have to, and then
Right.
next Tuesday is also a work session, so we couldn't approve it at that meeting either.
The way it's currently
Yeah, okay.
planned. But if
Okay,
you
yeah.
wanted to change it to make it work session and possible adoption, we could do that.
Okay.
And thank you for that, Commissioner Kyler, because that was the procedural question I was going to ask as well about the timing of this. So, Commissioner Krebs?
Okay. And I would like to comment that I know we've spent a lot of time on the budget as a group before it was published in an administrative session, and we've proposed it, but we've only, it's been an hour and a half, and it's a big budget, and I think we owe it some time. I don't know that we're going to need a second work session on Tuesday, but it might be good to leave it to final approval until when we've advertised that. There's no real hurry, but, so, where did it go? There were some items I was just trying to figure out where I've mentioned this before, but we've got a prior authorization list that is pages and pages long, and it's a lot of projects that are in place, and I understand how it works, and I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out, looking into the financial statement and looking back on the prior authorization lists, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects. And some are old, and some probably aren't up to, you can never build the project for what the cost is put in there. I don't think they're updated each year for inflation. But I'm trying to figure out how these prior authorizations affect our current, if we built everything on that list, which is prior authorized, what would that mean to our budget? I mean, there's dozens and dozens, maybe a couple hundred projects that are on there. Some are going to get wiped off because they've been done this year, and some have been on there that have been done for years.
I'm not sure there's an easy answer to that question. And first, they do get evaluated every year. It's not like these things just sit there and nobody's looking at them. Many of them are projects that are in process. Some of them are projects that go on every year. If we determine a project is not going to move ahead, that money gets moved off of that project and on to something else, so we don't have to find new money to fund a project. Much like you saw earlier today with the handful of school projects where there's money left is being redirected to another project. On inflation, there's no perfect way to deal with it, but we are trying to make sure that we keep current with, building construction projects. It's a pretty regular conversation we have, saying, do we still feel comfortable that this is a good number? There's a lot of moving parts there, so, there are absolutely going to be times when you can pull out one project and say, well, why is that one still here, or why hasn't it been changed? And I'm not going to say that that's not true. But I don't believe there should be any idea that there's just lots of money sitting there for no reason. And there are places, and we pointed this out to you in some of your work sessions, where there's money that's sitting there that's not being spent. It's there for a reason, but the board could choose to take it away. Like, we have money sitting there for PFA remediation. We are not spending that money today. I feel very confident that we're going to need to spend it, but if the board said, take it away, use it for something else, that's a choice that you can make. There are some spots like that.
And let me just give you some examples. I mean, again, there's pages of them, and there's explanations about the active capital projects and the current encumbrances for those projects. And some of them, it's hard to tell what the project name is, but some you can. I mean, and this is just technical, but one's a roof for South Carolina High School for 2016. There's 30 cents left on the balance. It seems to me that should have come off a number of years ago.
You're right.
Okay. Career and Tech Center, it shows a balance of $2,147,000. I think that's complete. Maybe there's still outstanding items, but it'd be nice to know what that is.
Yeah, and sometimes, and this happens on school projects a lot, there are still things that they are debating with the contractors and don't want to close up the account until they've had it all set up. I don't know on that one specifically, but I can tell you, when we built Winters Mill High School, for years, we had, I think, $65,000 on the books for some reforestation we had to do, but the issue didn't get settled for a long time. So you could look at it and say, well, this is stupid. Why is there $65,000 sitting there? But there was a reason. And, you know, when you're looking at trying to understand this, I understand the difficulty. This was not created to be an easy-to-use document. It was just a way to easily capture that there is money sitting out there. And this stuff is being pulled out of the financial system. The names are not set up to be easily understood. And I know you want something better, and we've been thinking about and talking about how to do it. I think it's a bigger project than you understand, though. So I'm not saying we can't do it, but it's not going to be something that we can just sit down for a couple hours and create this new, better way of presenting it.
I'm asking it because, as you know, I used to serve on the Board of Education and years ago, and we had some situations where there was never money to replace our tracks. And they were dysfunctional. We couldn't have track meets, the state track meet at any of our schools because they were in such bad shape, and there was never resources. So the commissioners at the time, and I don't know if this document was available, and we had these allocations, but they made a deal with us and said, listen, if you save money on your current projects that you're doing, we'll take that money and reallocate it so you can build your tracks. And it was an incentive, and we did it. We refurbished all 5 tracks. Now, unfortunately, it cost like twice as much to refurbish the tracks because we had to take them down to dirt because it was so overdue to get them done. So it cost us way more to do the project than it would have if we had resurfaced all the tracks when they were needed to be. But again, we took money that was available from other existing projects and they were more recent projects. And what I'm trying to figure out is we've got a lot of needs, and if we've got things sitting out here that we could reallocate to some of these roofs or that go up every year, 6% and 7%. I've said before, we're losing ground, but we've got encumbrances on things that we're not sure why they're still there, which means we've got the ability to either, I'm not sure when this money sits over there. If we did every one of these projects on these 4 pages tomorrow and said, oh, these are already allocated, what would it do to our budget?
I'm not sure what you mean when you say that. I mean, 'cause the money's budgeted, so we would be spending budgeted money. Some of those projects are going to create ongoing costs. When we build the state's attorney's building, we know we're going to be spending money to heat and cool it and to keep it maintained, but we've tried to account for that. That's captured as best we can in the plan today. So I'm not sure where you're trying to go.
Well, I'm trying, there's all different things in here, and I think in the future, this should be the document we start with in the budget process next year. You know, which projects are going to be closed out, because some of them have been. Which of them have gone up in price, because what happens is we got a price in here. We got all these pre-Ks in here that have been pre-approved in prior years. So we don't even have them on our current year list because they're in here from and HVAC systems. But yet, if they're from a couple of years ago, obviously the price has gone up. So then you're going to come back and look for another additional appropriation for the increase in the price.
Maybe, but it might be in there for a couple of years ago, and it's now been bid and awarded and underway. And, you know, again, I have to say, you know, this this document is in there because we felt like there ought to be a place where you can see there's money that's already been appropriated. You are actually the first person who has ever brought up these pages. It's not like we're telling people, no, we're not going to provide information. Nobody's ever looked at it. And if the board wants this to be the starting point, then we can work toward trying to make that the starting point. But that's the first time that idea has ever come up.
And you know what? You're probably right. It jumped out at me. I'm an accountant. I look at this stuff all the time. And this jumped right out at me. It should be a starting point of all of our conversations. Because, for example, I'll give you another example. We had talked earlier, Charles Carroll Gym. There was a request, and I don't remember if we put it in or not for the partition for Charles Carroll Gym. Don't remember, $150,000 it was asked of us. I'm not sure if we ended up. However, there is a project on here for the Charles Carroll Gym from 2018, which is, 6 years ago. And it says that there's a $613,000 balance left. And if that is still accurate, if nothing's been spent this year, if that's still there, if we knew the updated number, we could have maybe taken that money and put it toward that partition.
I fully understand. And I've said this before, but I think it's important again. If the board truly wants to make this the starting point and go through each one of these projects, you're going to need to devote a lot more time than you have in the past. And if you devote more time, we'll devote more time. But I don't think there should be any idea that you're going to spend 15 minutes on this.
Oh, I agree with you, and we should spend a lot more time than we are understanding what we have in place, because there are hundreds of these. I mean, I don't know how many is on a page, and there's no total. And maybe during the year, they've been updated. Maybe some of these will fall off. And you told me that when we do the budget, which this is from 26, it will be, and it's good that it's in here. This is transparency, and this should be here. I wish the titles, I could figure out what they were for a little bit more. But we would be able to go through this each year very quickly to see what's left at a certain point in time when we start the budget and say, gosh, there's still money in the Charles Carroll Gym, maybe, to do this $150,000 thing that we wanted to do. Here's money sitting here. And then at what point do we close these out? At what point do we say, this project is done, it's been 5 years, and I understand what you said, but there should be some rationale that takes it off versus it just sitting there. And then in addition to that, if there's things that are still on here that have been on here for 10 and 15 years, the project obviously is not going to be built for that amount of money. So if we still want to prioritize it, we should ask for an update to what the projected costs would be. So when we go to do that particular bridge, it's not 5 times more money because we appropriated it 15 years ago.
Okay, I'm not saying that it's perfect and that we never miss anything, but everything you're saying does happen. We want to close out projects. If we're in a place where we say, this is done, there is absolutely no incentive to keep money there because we can use this to avoid having to find new money. We do try to make sure we're staying consistent with what inflation would suggest. When there's an opportunity to close something out and reallocate the money, we're pushing that way. And we tell the board, here are the places where we're reappropriating money. I mean, it's not a secret.
No, it's not a secret. I just think it's a secret. It's not a secret at all. It's here. I just don't think the average person, even board members, it's something that's intuitive to them to look at these pages and say, what is an active capital project with prior
I
appropriation?
fully agree.
Okay.
And it was never intended to be. If the board tells me, forget what it was intended to be, here's what we want it to be, we'll try to figure that out. But again, I've never had anybody in the public ever bring up these pages.
Well, and
Deb, I'm sorry, Deb, you wanted to
I did want to clarify something. You were using the Charles Carroll as an example, and you were looking at one sheet that says it has a balance. Why aren't we doing anything with the balance? If you look on page 35 of the Community Investment Plan book, and about 3/4 of the way down the list, you can see the Charles Carroll Community Center, we are reappropriating the money to the county building systemic renovation. So we are closing out the project, which would then be a zero balance. So budget has done that. They have looked at the existing projects and they have said, this one no longer needs the money. Now, they were also evaluating the request for the partition and said that their recommendation was not to include that additional money. So that's why it ended up the way it is. But I just wanted to let you know that this example in particular can walk you through what has happened with that project.
So I see on here what you're pointing to, and there's 650,000 on this prior allocation, and there's 163,000 that is on this list. So where's the difference?
I can explain the difference.
Okay.
The remainder of the difference was reappropriated in last year's budget. So that prior appropriation list shows May, but then we moved the funding in July. So it's really a timing issue. So we took most of the funding in '26, and then as we determined if there were other priorities or other needs for Charles Carroll, we were able to close that project out this year, which is why we're reappropriating the remainder of it to that project.
And what I'm suggesting is that in a system like this, and the money's coming from these prior allocations, that as you spend the money, you put a debit here, a credit here, and it should reduce that number and be ongoing as it's being done. So it's
Well, in
always
the
up.
financial system, it is.
Okay, but for us, it's,
This is a point in time.
but at a point in time when this board gets together and looks, we should have a look at a point in time that's not from a year ago and say, what are the current balances? For instance, there is still money left in the Charles, and I'm picking this one thing, and I know everyone you could give me an example for, but we don't see that. So the Charles Carroll Community Center, it looks like there's $163,000 left as of this date. And there was an ask for $150,000. The question was, do we put new money into that? Well, if we'd known this, maybe we would have said, sure, they still got $150,000 left. We think it is a priority, and we might have made a different
In that
decision.
situation, we would have told you, you don't need new money, we have money.
If that had been the situation.
Okay.
But you'd already moved it off.
Yeah, right, if the money's still there.
So
But
are
like
we
Deb-
doing the Charles Carroll partition, is that in the plans to do?
That didn't make it in, right?
I don't think,
I don't think it
I don't
made
think
it.
that was,
And I'm not sure if we would have made it different, but I think we didn't do it, but maybe if we knew there was the money there in that project to do it, we might have said.
There wasn't money there.
So this 163 is not still there?
So that's what Deb just
just
explained
told
to you. It's already, it has been reallocated. It happened after that document, though.
So it seems to me, if I may, I understand that there's certainly discussion about the list of these ongoing projects. My thought would be because, we are not constrained to a specific couple of months through the course of the year. We start having our closed administrative informational sessions about the budget, sometimes months in advance of even the actual budget season proper for the commissioners itself. So my thought would be when we have those closed admin meetings where we're sitting around the table with Roberta, Deb, Ted, and Heidi, that would be a fantastic time to start looking through some of these specific items. It would certainly give us that advance perspective going into the actual budget cycle for the commissioners themselves. But it would also allow us, once we get into the actual budget cycle itself, to orient ourselves specifically toward the fiscal picture of things.
Okay, I understand that. This is our budget cycle. I'm not sure if it'll come up again. I'm really trying to understand this. I'm looking at the enterprise fund. We've talked about utility rates. And I'm not questioning what you're giving to us. I'm questioning how we as a board use it or know to use it, or any boards know how to use it. And to go back and say, this is a lot of projects. There's money in here for Crim Gold. I didn't realize there was money for certain things from years ago that were supposed to be done. Is that in addition to the money we've just put in this year? Is it still allocated? What is what is the total now? Is it the prior and the new, or is it just the new?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, it's a question, because there are Rec and Parks things in here that have not been done as well. And some might be active and ongoing, and some we might not. It'd be nice for us to know, what do we have allocated from the past? I've only been here for a few months. These guys have been here for 3.5 years. They should know what prior boards allocated, and you can look at it and see that. There's a bunch of, under the Utility Enterprise Fund, we have got a bunch of projects, Sykesville Storage Upgrade for $9 million, Freedom Waste, something, I can't tell what that is, CNT, for $2.3 million. There's money in here for a county water line for $2 million, and they might be fine projects. But when you allocate this money, how does this, and this is a question from when we get with this work group on the enterprise funds, wastewater treatment plant, $143,000, a booster upgrade, I'm not sure who that's for $3.6 million. at what point does that get put into the enterprise fund? And, some of them are allocated a number of years ago. At what point does that hit the?
They're always in the enterprise fund.
No, my question is, at what point do you say we need to now recoup this money from the ratepayers because we're going to do these things? Because there was something that I read somewhere that said we need to collect this money up front so that we can have the money to spend and don't have to bond it. It's going to get to the question of the enterprise funds. Is this money already calculated into the enterprise funds?
Yes.
Okay, so we haven't done the projects yet. Some of them are several years old, yet we're already charging the ratepayers for them. And then how does that get spread over what period of time for them to pay the new rates based on these projects that have not been done yet?
Another complicated question. When we're calculating the rates, I say we don't actually calculate the rates. It happens in the comptroller's office. But we're looking at operating costs and we're looking at capital projects and what it's going to take to fund all those. Capital projects, there's what they call smoothing, where we spread the impact over a number of years. But we are capturing the projected costs of all the capital projects, and that is built into the rates. Now, if a project doesn't happen, and that almost never happens in utilities because projects get in because they need to happen. But if somehow it was determined a project isn't needed, that would get caught up in the next year's rate calculation. We would know that this $2 million no longer needs to get spent, and we'd know the things that we think are going to get spent. This is not static. Every year there is coordination between budget and utilities and the comptroller's office on what's going to get done, what are things going to cost, how do we establish the rates for paying that.
Okay. And I've heard a lot of times, many times, that the commissioners gave direction to do this. And I get that. And it's hard when you have 5. But it might have been commissioners like from 3 boards ago that understand it. Right now, what you just said is that we got all these projects, and it's millions and millions of dollars that are going into the utility fund, the utilities enterprise fund, that we haven't expended yet. Yet we're spreading it over the cost of the rates. So rates are going up based on these future projects, which means that people that are currently using the water and sewer are paying for future expansion of something that they haven't used yet.
This isn't about expansion.
Well, not, but a future, well,
Maintenance, yeah.
future maintenance that has not been done yet. And then future ratepayers would probably, they're going to pay less because they're getting the benefit.
This goes on forever. We never run out of projects. I don't know.
It's when you account for them it's when they're being accounted for before they're spent that's concerning to me, because we're collecting the money on ratepayers here, and the people that are in the future, they might not live there anymore, and then they're actually paying for in advance for these projects in their rates, I think, the way it's expended here, the way you just explained it. But then, let's say they move 5 years from now, they've paid for stuff that hasn't even occurred yet. And just for your information, I've been reading up a lot on this enterprise stuff. In many counties, they make sure that growth pays for growth, so that, if there's something.
This is not about growth.
It is about maintenance, but you're making people currently pay for stuff that's going to happen in the future. And whether it's a good policy or not, I think that we should understand it as I know we say, oh, the enterprise fund's got to pay for itself, but we don't know how the workings of it are, that some board 20 years ago might have told them to do it. And it costs to keep these facilities current have gone up dramatically. So I'm just suggesting there's a lot of projects in here that haven't been done. They're in here 4, 5, 6, 7. Here's one that's been here for 9 years. That's, $9 million that has been now, I guess, charged to people. It would just be nice to understand for 9 years, their rates have been covering this, how that gets baked in to the system.
Commissioner Krebs, when they do the smoothing, they'll collect ahead of time and they'll collect afterwards. So it's a period of time, let's say, say a project is 10 years of collecting. They might do it in year 5, so you can have some prepaids and you have some after the fact. But the smoothing is there put into place so you don't have spikes in the water and sewer user fees.
Okay, so, and what you said, I understand, but then we've got, it's different in the towns. And they obviously are not necessarily doing it the same way. And then they're at a shortfall and they need to go upgrade. And then they got this huge amount that they have to say, well, I need this amount of money, and then we're going to come and backfill it. It'd just be nice to say that it's being done similarly, that on one hand, these ratepayers are paying stuff ahead of time and saving the money so that when the project becomes due. On the other hand, maybe some aren't doing it the same way, and then the project comes due and it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to hit my rates. And then they want to get money from somewhere else, from the rest of the people. I'm not saying anybody's wrong, it's just that there should be a consistent way of doing this for everyone, because it's a,
It is being done consistently. I mean,
Well,
you might,
within the, no, I said,
You mean between the towns and the county?
especially if we're going to get involved in starting to
Towns-
subsidize.
I mean, we can certainly talk with the towns about that, but how the towns choose to tax or collect fees from their citizens is totally within their purview.
agree with
We can make
you.
suggestions, but.
I agree with you, but then if we're going to start getting into helping, and obviously because of not having the smoothing ahead of time, they're hit with this big capital project that's unaffordable. So it might be suggested that they do that. I'm not sure what the right way is, but that should be part of this work session, is how we expect it versus, oh my gosh, I got this huge amount that I've got to pay for. We can never do it. Rates are going to go up through the roof, and maybe they should have been. I don't know the answer to this. I'm just suggesting that we're doing it one way. It sounds like some are doing it the other. I'm not sure how they're doing it, but I think it's something that should be talked about. And for my district, I know we've been here 2 hours now. To me, this is nothing for a budget that's almost $1 billion to spend some time talking about it. So there are also rec and park projects in here. As I say, Crimgold is in here for some of them. From a number of years ago. I don't know if you knew that there's actually other money sitting there.
yes, we know.
I mean, you know, us, do we know? Do you know, Mr. Gurin, that we have other resources sitting there that we're looking at?
But that's why I keep trying to say, if we believe that the resources are available for you to make a different choice, we're going to tell you that. I think you're starting from a
Misperception.
point that assumes nobody's looking at these things.
No, I think you all know it. No, I think you do know. I think the board is not aware of it.
So, for example, I think Ted's point is, if a commissioner suggests we spend money on X, and X is there's already money available to do that kind of thing, they're not going to let you, basically. They're going to highly recommend that you use the money available rather than spend additional money. And so this is all, all programmed to be spent, as you said, although it's not anticipated to be spent tomorrow, it could officially be spent tomorrow. And of course, there'd be other impacts on operating and things. It's there to be spent, and it's anticipated that it will be spent. And some of it already has been spent and is in the process of being spent, because the two documents you're looking at, one is already over a year old, and the one that is in the most current was produced probably a couple months ago. I'm just guessing. You could tell me when. And so it's already got some age on it. So this is an ongoing, continuous process, and all you're looking at is a brief point in time. And certainly, if the board wants to get more updates, more frequent, the other day, the three of us talked about, maybe on quarterly when Ted comes in and gives you budget updates, that there could be an update on this kind of thing. We could talk about it in your, summer budget work sessions about how you want to change, if at all, the budget process and additional information you'd like to see and when you'd like to see it. All that's perfectly reasonable. But, at the moment, I know I understand your concerns, and we're not trying to minimize them in any way, but I think it would be best to address them when we have all the information.
Okay.
And we don't have it all right in front of us at the moment.
And-
What we
and I-
have is 2 points of time that are distant in time from each other.
If I can interject, this is a good conversation, and at some point during the budget session, if I recall, the board did ask, in addition to the information that you see here, not for a better accounting of the money, because that's not what we're saying, but a better understanding of how those budget flows work for budget items that either there's money there and it's not going to be spent, or CIP projects that have been completed in the previous, let's say, 2 fiscal years. So we just get a better understanding of what's happened, what's not happening, and then we can take a better look at how much money is available, which, of course, the Budgets Office is doing consistently. I've got an 11 o'clock meeting here in the building that I don't want to be too late for. Commissioner Krebs, you mentioned that you had another issue that I'd like to be available for to listen, but I do have a meeting here in the building that I've got to get to.
All right, so I'm going to make a motion that we ask the staff to come back to us, and maybe in a work session, to explain the active capital projects with prior appropriation.
Well, we already.
Excuse me, I'm doing a motion, and I know nobody likes motions around here, but if we don't vote on something, exactly what we're asking for, and we don't get 3 nods, we don't ever get it done. I asked for a report on this 6 weeks ago, and I didn't get it because I didn't get anybody nodding their head
Well,
to give it to me.
no, no, no.
Excuse me. Okay, I'm asking that we, as the board, have something in place, so not just us, but future boards understand what prior appropriations are, and that each year in the capital budget, we have a look at that, and we can understand the project name, and maybe if there is a reason, there would be some explanation in here. My motion is to have a work session on whoever's interested in participating, I certainly am, in active capital projects with prior appropriations, and to explain how we could make it more timely and more readable and visible to us, the board, to make decisions, and to the public. And from my perspective, again, this is the world that I live in, and I like numbers, and I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong. I'm saying the board is not necessarily knowing that this exists, and I'm not blaming them. You're not people that read financial statements. As you know, Ted, you used to send me your financial statement every year when I was in legislature, and I have every one of them, and I read them all, and they're all highlighted because I read this stuff. I never actually saw this because I never actually read the back of the budget, but I read your financial statements, and it's being reported accurately. It's just not transparent to us to reprioritize things. This stuff should be almost available. If you've spent money on this capital project, you should reduce it immediately. You should be able to almost print it out.
In the financial system, it does. And I want to be clear, we were not ignoring this request. We've been busy trying to get through the end of this budget, and we have been talking about how do we address this request? Because again, I don't think it's as easy as you think it's going to be, and we're trying to figure out how to do it. But whenever possible, I try to respond to what I've been asked for from the board as quickly as I can. In this case, quickly as I can just wasn't quick.
And Commissioner, I was going to say, prior to you making that motion, we did ask Ted and staff to come up with that kind of revision, that way of coming to us with that information. So I don't think that the motion is necessary because they're already working on it.
I just would like, a motion is the only official thing that has a record of a vote. Okay, I've looked back on things that we said we agreed to, and I can't see where it was agreed to because there was no motion and no vote. And I want to be sure that we have it recorded, what the vote is, to do this. Because, again, there's things that have been done in the past, you have to watch it and figure out, did they really agree? That is not the way you run. If you want to do something, you put something down and you vote on it, and those words are what become active participation. So I know we don't have rules, but I'm going to make a motion that we have a work session on explaining the active capital projects in prior allocations, with prior appropriations, and ask the board to give their input as what they'd like to see in order to have this more self-explanatory when we enter our budget process and on an ongoing basis.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I don't agree that we need a quote-unquote work session for that. I think that the motion should be for the staff to continue to produce the information we've asked for and present it to us when they think they've got a good solution. But the work session is...
Well, let's not make it work. Let's just say propose it. I think it would be nice for them to understand. I don't know what you all need to know to know what's in here. For a layperson that's a new person coming in, how would we better present this and use the information as we approach our budget process to know what's in, what we need to add to? Again, there's appropriations in here for Crim Gold. They've been.
I understand.
So
Well, not-
I
didn't hear.
take the word work session out just to have a presentation or part of an agenda item. But I'd like feedback from the board as to what they expect this document to mean to them and when, at what points do you want it to be updated so we can use it as a tool. It's a huge tool to have in front of us before we get into the budget process, and also for these utility funds to know how we're allocating those monies that are already, some of them are spent, some of them are not spent. At what point are they? So I would change it from a work session to a motion to explain the active capital projects in prior appropriations to the board, and with input from the board and direction from the board is what they'd like to see in the report to make it user-friendly and helpful to them.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Lack of a second, motion fails.
I feel like we're,
Well, the fact that no one knew what was in this at all is problematic to me. Okay.
Well, Commissioner, we may just have a different point of view about it, that's all.
And one comment, I think I understand it fully, and if I didn't, I'd ask them questions and they'd respond. But the other thing is the logic of this. You used the example of a wall at Charles Carroll. If that's a good idea, we'll find the money. If that's a bad idea, I don't care if we got the money laying in a pile. I hope we don't decide to do it just because we have the money, and that's an illogical decision.
But part of what I'm suggesting is that there might be things that have come up that you want to do in your district that you need to do, and you think that we only have a limited pot of, one-time money this year, but no, we actually have all these prior allocations that you could reallocate to something else, whether it's
And I
not.
understand that, and I would ask that, and I don't need a work session to understand that, and I'm kind of a layperson, but
did you
Okay, all right, so, next question.
want to skip out?
All right. There was, and this goes back to Rec and Parks. I believe we put this in our budget, because I couldn't gotta find it. On Rec and Parks budget, I think we had put in money for a vehicle for something, for Charles, Sports Complex. And since then, and I was wondering, I think a couple of us did not vote to do that in our administrative session. And since then, I've found out that our rec councils have to pay for their own. If they want a vehicle, they raise their fees and they pay for it. And some of them have 12-year-old vehicles because they have to raise fees to spend the $40,000 or whatever it is. And I don't have the number in front of me, it's $40,000 some dollars. I would like to ask for that to be removed from the budget and transferred over to this outstanding money that we will reallocate once we decide what level of service we're going to provide. It's hard to provide to all the rec councils because it's, from what I understand, that particular rec council is more, it's not a rec council, it's the Carroll County Sports Complex, and it's more for the adult program, which is fine and robust, but it seems like they should, in their fees, have to pay for their vehicle, just like all the other rec councils would have to if they were purchasing one.
This is not about a rec council. It's because it is a county-run facility. Now, the sports complex is used by rec councils, but this is not about the rec council.
It's only used
Now,
by,
what-
Staff.
but my point is, it's not, some of our folks, our fees are getting so high to play sports because they have to cover so much stuff. If you have a family of 2 or 3, some really can't afford it because all of this stuff is built into our fees for our kids to play soccer or to play football or whatever they're playing. But in this situation, it's adults, and we have it built into the county budget, so everyone is paying for it in the county, yet only some people use it. I just want to treat all folks the same, whether it's a rec council or it's a county-run facility. It's nice that the county runs that facility for people, but we have volunteers running all of our other facilities, and it's an unequal playing field, and I'd like to make it more of an equal playing field, that if we're going to give it to one group, that the others would be eligible if they if that's the direction we're going to move in.
The sports complex and rec councils are fundamentally different. Now, if the board wants to take up, how do we want to run the sports complex? Do we want to do these things? I mean, that would be a valid conversation. But as things stand, comparing this purchase to a rec council purchase is just not relevant.
And to your point, I mean, if we did create some sort of precedent, and I'm not suggesting we did, with that particular vehicle, and that's, I think, Mr. Zaleski, and you actually just made the same point, then that's something we'll take into account when we're taking a look at that $5 million, which again is an unprecedented amount of money to try to find long-term improvements and solutions to our outdoor fields, and maybe even, maybe, like you said, maybe it extends to even indoor space, which I think will be obviously a lot more difficult. So yeah, we'll take that into account when we're deciding what to do. If in fact we set a precedent with that, then trust me, rec councils don't miss a thing. They notice everything. So I'm sure that'll come up.
Okay, so I'm just going to make a motion that we remove the vehicle that was put into the budget for 40-some-odd thousand plus the $5,000 a year maintenance fee on that, and reallocate that to the unassigned rec budget that we're going to have this work group on, and then we can decide at that time how we're going to fund those types of purchases for
You
everyone.
want to add the 40,000 to the 5 million, you're saying?
Yes. I mean, just move it. If that's, they can remove it. I was just trying to make it available, so if they decide that it's the right thing to do, they can bring it back. If they decide, hey, after we look at all this, that, hey, we got to give the sports complex a vehicle and we're going to pay for our own, then it would be available to be returned, if that's the consensus of the work group and the board.
But that 5 million isn't for rec councils, though. That's for county expenditures.
No, it's not for rec councils, but the recommendations that this work group might come up with and how they're going to fund in the future. I'm just looking at, look at how much work these councils put in, and they're buying their own vehicles. Some are 12 and 15 years old, and they're putting it into their fees, and yet the fees, I don't know what the fees are at the sports complex for adults to use adult programs, don't have these same fees built into their rates for their rec council, and I just would like to, as we work through this work group, what is the balance? And that would allow it to come back once the work group makes recommendations and we make decisions on that comprehensively.
And I'd like to mention, since 1970-something, I've never set a fee rate based on buying a vehicle or field maintenance or gym maintenance or anything. North Carroll Rec Council, for the public, has a separate fund for spotter pots, a separate fund for field maintenance, and I just want everybody out there to know we do not raise fees to buy a piece of equipment. That's a misnomer.
And I'm not sure how people pay for it, but that'd be nice to find out how they're paying for these things.
So we have a motion, do we have a second? Hearing no second, motion dies.
Okay, that's all right. Got a few more things here. So I'm sorry that, I thought we were going to really go through this stuff a little bit in the public so they could see some discussion on some issues, but.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay,
You're-
so one of the,
One commissioner has a meeting, and if I plan based on our schedule, which is why I'm here on time to start a meeting. This needs
I was
to
here
end.
before you were, about 20 minutes
I'm
before.
s- I'm,
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you weren't in that chair before I was, and you like
walked out to
say,
go to the
"I'm
bathroom."
sorry, I have the floor, please be quiet
Okay.
and not interrupt me.
All right.
Commissioner
So
Kyler. if you-
sooner or later, we need to end this meeting, and I guess next
Commissioner, if you-
Tuesday we'll meet and listen to you for an hour or two. I'm okay with that.
Commissioner
But
Kyler, if
I
you-
make plans based on our
If you-
schedule, which is why I was in this chair before you every meeting I think we've had since you've been here,
Commissioner
which is
Kyler, if you
irrelevant.
have-
Well, I'm sorry.
I'm just letting you know, if you have a prior obligation, please feel free to head out to meet that obligation. Commissioner Gordon and I will at least until Commissioner Gordon can.
No, I'll stay here, but it's just, it's not fair to other board members. It's not.
Okay, thank you. And I want to be very, very clear. My purpose of being in this seat is to represent the people in the county, and I think that we have a duty to look at this budget, ask questions about it in the public forum, and make sure that we know what we're doing when we put the budget out. And And maybe because excuse me, I do have the floor now.
And I have the same duty, and that's why I'm here on time every meeting. Go
Okay.
ahead.
And Commissioner Kyler, I'm very happy that you're in your seat very early.
I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry.
All right,
I had
if
to
we
go to the
could-
bathroom, so I left my stuff here and I went to the bathroom. And I'm sorry I wasn't here at the very moment you were, but I applaud you for that. I
We're
applaud you.
getting too far afield
Okay.
here.
I
We're
agree.
getting too
Okay,
far
so,
afield.
question. On the financial statements, I was looking at, I know that in a budget, we put, there was 5% or 4.5% increases put into the budget. And I'm looking at the financial statements about the total pension liability for the pension plans. And they're looking at inflation rate of 2.5%, and they're also looking at the projected payroll increases of 3% a year. How would this affect the valuations and the amount we have to put into the pension plan, and what is the fiscal impact of that?
Well, there are a lot of variables. Salary increases is just one, but we have an actuarial study done every year to determine what our contribution should be for the next year. Our pensions are well-funded. I don't think we have any concerns there, and I don't think there's any reason to think that the specific salary increase is going to noticeably impact what we're planning for.
Okay. And one of the things I'm going to suggest too, I mean, you know what, I don't care if I get second to any of this stuff, it's just good financial practice, and I'm sorry that, I believe that we should be doing that at the size of the budget that we handle, and it's taxpayer money, it's not, that we should be knowing the budget impact. So I want to make a motion that for the actions that we do to raise fees and to spend money, have a budget impact statement that comes with them, so we know the full budget impact when we make a decision like this. And we can modify that to if it has no, it could say has no significant impact, but we make a decision, we're just making it on the raw numbers, we're not necessarily making it on the overhead or the pension amount that's going to have to go in, but just knowing what the full budget impact is of something when we put it into the budget.
We are always trying to provide you with our best projection of what the full impact would be. Now, some things are easier than others. When you talk about impact of salary increase on pension, without an actuarial study, I have no way to give you a number. I can't tell you, especially since, it's also driven by hires and retirements and investment returns. I can't give you that number.
Well, there are assumptions that are made, and every bill that we ever look at in Annapolis has a budget impact statement. And it might say not significant, it might say this was what we estimate, and it's not a perfect science, but at least you have an idea. And when your overhead for benefits is a substantial part of your package, which it is, there should be at least a number, a percentage number that you say, okay, if we spend $100,000 for somebody, their overhead impact is 30-some percent. So you put 130% into that number.
We do that.
Well, what we're doing now that I didn't really understand, we're now transferring that money. It's not in that category anymore. It's now under HR. So I'm
Are you talking about DFEMS?
yeah.
Okay, that's strictly a mechanical change. It has nothing to do with how much money we're going to spend.
No, I agree. It's just so that we, as commissioners, when we know that we're going to add 8 positions for whatever, or up salaries by X, we know what the total budget impact is, not just.
You got that information with all the position requests. We gave you our projections of total cost for every new position.
Okay, but when we do certain things like, what other decisions that are made, it should be like a standardized thing. This is the cost, this is no impact, this can be done with existing resources, or something that lets us know.
Every decision is, I'm sorry, everything is. So if you buy a truck, the truck has operating expenses. If you buy a truck for something that needs to be upfitted for like the sheriff or some other specialty vehicles, there are those costs involved. I mean, as much as absolutely possibly, well, as much as possible, all of the future costs are included in those numbers for anything that the county does.
So when we change a percentage of what's recommended for a future increase, all of the extra costs are already budgeted in there.
Yes.
Well, then I
Yes.
think it should say that. So we know this is, because then I saw that it was transferred, like the DFEM stuff, to the HR budget. It's like, how do you look at a budget and say, what is the cost of this if their benefits are over here in a different pot?
So as Ted's explained.
Well, you could argue to do it differently, but DFEMS was the exception. Everything else is budgeted in HR or in facilities or in IT. Sounds like you might be heading toward an idea of cost accounting. You know, we're not set up to do that. I'm not sure how we'd be better off for doing it, but that would be a huge change for us.
No, it's not cost accounting, it's cost center accounting. So you know what this cost center costs and what this cost center costs, whether it's unemployment benefits or workman's comp benefits or health benefits or retirement benefits, you know what this cost center is. And you can see in the cost center what the increases in those pieces in the cost center. So you see what's driving the costs in the cost center.
I understand. I'm saying we're not set up to do that.
So sometimes salaries would drive a cost center, and sometimes benefits could. Because what I try to look at, sometimes I'd rather that the salary increase versus the benefit cost increase, and that way we would see, if one's going up 4% and one's going up 10%, we might say, maybe we need to put some of these benefits onto the scale, because sometimes people just look at the scale. We don't necessarily have that tool to look at to see what's driving those costs of that particular department.
And again, I understand, and I'd say we actually try to do it in exactly the opposite way. What we want the commissioners to understand is that the Bureau of Aging is going up 4%, not because of salary increases or because of benefit changes, but because of the money that they will use to provide the services that they provide. Again,
There is a line item for them that you could break down. I'm just trying to figure out, when we have certain assumptions. So when you told us, I guess, in our assumptions, that we had assumed back when we started at a certain level of increase for 5 years out. But yet our financial statement says the actuarial assumptions for pension liability are 2% lower than that. And it seems to me if we're going to use assumptions for the budget for 5 years out, that we should be using the same assumptions for the actuarial for the financial statements for the pension liability.
The actuaries are looking at this differently than we are. They are making assumptions that some people are going to go away and that the salary increase won't be as much as it might have been because there's been a change of personnel. In our plan, we are not assuming that people are going to go away. We also don't build in a negative in the budget for turnover. Some organizations do that. I believe we're better off doing it the way we're doing because it provides us with some flexibility because we know that not every dollar that was budgeted for salaries is going to get spent.
No, I agree with you. But the assumptions that go in, the more they're close to what you're looking at, the better product you're going to get out of it. So I guess I'm asking again, like on this particular one, it's a 2% difference, which is about a 60% difference in what they are assuming. The more you get each assumption close to what is actually presumed, the better you're going to have a better outcome. I think you can ask our actuarial expert, which is Donna Savigny, who would look at this, and I'll probably say the same thing. So it seems...
Actuaries are doing a different job than we're doing.
But the end result is that they're trying to come up with the closest, based on the assumptions, they're trying to come up with the closest.
For actuarial purposes, though.
But then we're using.
Budgeting is not actuarial. And we're trying to give you we don't want to assume that building construction is going to lose a position 2 years from now. We don't know that. Actuaries don't care about building construction, but they're going to say across the organization, you're likely to lose X number of positions next year. I think they're fundamentally different approaches. And I don't think either is right or wrong. They're just doing different jobs.
Okay. All right, so one more thing that, well, a couple more things, but one thing that we had talked about in our,
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I think you had an outstanding motion.
oh, I'm sorry, we didn't finish that. Motion, that we have a budget impact statement on any significant recommendations for the budget or for anything that comes in front of us as a proposal, that we know what the budget impact would be.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? For lack of a second, motion dies.
Wait a minute, writing this down. I'm just trying to do my job. So, next issue is, in the budget, we have $8 million for PFAS removal for the for the new fire training center. And I've been doing some homework, and I had a long discussion with Mr. Hine about this, and I appreciate the work that they're trying to do, but it's a very unknown subject right now, and there is, we could potentially spend our whole budget on PFAS removal under what's currently happening. So, we had 2 sessions on it at MACO this summer, which I attended, and a lot of talk about the sources of PFAS and, like, they're putting these sludge materials down on our farmland, and it's allowed, and it could have PFAS in it. We still have to accept it into our county. It's still happening. We've got some removal issues at the training center. We've had a long conversation about it yesterday. MDE stated in writing and at the work session that they had planned to fully grant fund the PFAS remediations for certain things, and it didn't have a specific in it in the report that I got. So I know we have $5 million in for unallocated PFAS removal, and then we've got another $8 million in for the removal just at the training facility. And I would like to make a motion that for the PFAS remediation at the training facility, that we have not applied for it. We apply for grant funding as an alternative for the remediation, and have a report on the likelihood of success of this remediation, because it's a precedent for other areas of the county if we're going to do this. Because right now, all turf fields, playgrounds, anything near a firehouse is going to be looked at with suspect. I know this one has been identified, but there are federal grants available. Hampstead got a huge federal grant of $18 million for their remediation for the same thing. They had their firehouse there. They were getting ready to be built. They had wells nearby that had high PFAS levels, and Mayor Nevin went for a federal grant early on and got $18 million to upgrade and put the proper things in place at the source of the water plant versus taking away the dirt. And I just would like us to make sure that we apply for the $8 million remediation and expect that to occur for our remediation, because there's a lot of money out there to do these remediations versus it's very easy just to the easiest thing for us to do is put stuff in the budget and ask somebody to pay for it, our taxpayers. But it's a little harder to apply for the grants, go for the grants, and get the source to pay for it. So my motion is to ask the whoever does our grants, to apply for alternatives from either MDE or the federal government for the PFAS remediation, for all of it, but for the PFAS remediation for the Carroll County Fire Training Facility prior to the expenditure of those monies, of the $8 million of taxpayer money for Carroll County. And MDE is the one making us do the remediation, so I think we should certainly be applying for the grant money that is available.
The Public Safety Training Center is fundamentally different than our larger concerns about PFAS and what we're going to do about it. As things stand, we intend to excavate dirt that we know is contaminated with PFAS. If we're going to dig it up, we're going to have to do something with it. That's what this money is going to, is to get rid of contaminated dirt. The only way to avoid that is for us not to move ahead with this project. If we don't build, we don't have to dig up the dirt, and for now, it could remain there, and it would be just like every other PFAS concern.
And Commissioner, to the motion that you made, my understanding is, and Deb and Roberta can correct me if I'm wrong, staff is looking into the grant opportunities already.
I'm just asking that we I think they should have been looked into before asking us, and a long time ago. We've known about this for a while.
Oh, they have been, believe me, I promise you. The $5 million that we set aside for PFAS already was part of that overall effort. It's ensuring.
All right, then I will just say this. Let's apply for the grants or show us the grant that has been applied for and been denied, because I don't know that that has occurred. And if it has, then forgive me. But I just think we usually apply the grants, we usually vote on the grants. Maybe it happened before I got here. That was not indicated to me that we had applied for the grant. So if you're right, then we've applied for the grant, we'll see what happens, and then we can advocate for that grant. Our delegation can advocate it, we can advocate for it. That hasn't happened since I've been here. So it would, if they have applied, then they could show that they have applied, and then we could make sure that we follow through on that grant for the $8 million, because $8 million would be, again, another roof, another HVAC system. We have a long list of needs, and I want to make sure that we are applying for the money that is out there. And I have it with me, but I have both handouts from the MACO conference that had in there that MDE had intended to pay for all the remediation for these things right now. So I just want to make sure that we've done it.
I understand that. I mean, I can't speak for the time frame, but whether it's just an ongoing research process right now, or there are grants that have actually been applied for this specific, because I don't have that information in front of me, right? But I know that staff is working on that. I know that they are, looking into these grants at minimum, so.
They did apply
Yes,
for
I'm sorry.
I think it was $1.5 million for the stormwater management pond that's there as part of the Public Safety Training Center project, and it was denied. We can get you those details.
Okay. So
And I think some of those MDE grants, and we can look into them as well in case we missed something, but are specifically related to water projects, is my recollection for what I saw.
Well, and what I found out, if talking to
remembering
Mr. Hine.
In a water project,
Well,
they
and
may
I
not
thought,
be eligible.
and I thought it was a water project that had to do with the well at Westminster, and it's not. It's a water project. We're doing this because there seems to be some finger pointing from Baltimore City, who has no room to talk about that. PFAS is getting into their drinking water, and it's all coming from us, which that's questionable, considering that they're 20 years behind on upgrading their wastewater treatment plant and have asked for a 10-year extension. And then they're going to blame this on our one project. So we're not doing it for water. From what I understand, we're doing it for Baltimore City to make sure that our PFAS is not getting into their water, which is the water we drink from too.
Well, we're removing the concrete from the Public Safety Training Center and maybe some dirt around it in order to build a building, and that is contaminated with PFAS and needs to be handled separately, or specially, I should say. So that's the purpose of this $8 million in this project. It's not a remediation effort in the sense of this, like what Hampstead did, or others maybe across the county or across the state.
Well, and Hampstead just built over their contaminated site and then is treating the water at the source. Our water is already being treated at the source for the well successfully, from what I understand, which is a good thing, because that was the most pertinent thing to me, is make sure that the well water was taken care of, and it is. So it's so I'm just going to put this out there again. Motion to ask the appropriate parties to apply for grants, or provide that they have applied for the grants actively to pay for the $8 million remediation of PFAS for the Carroll County Training Center project.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I have a question real quick regarding all of this right now. So I'm just trying to understand. So I understand your motion, but staff just mentioned that we've applied for a variety of grants, and obviously they can get us that information. If they've applied and we've been rejected for a number of those grants, obviously we can get that information. So I'm just trying to understand, and I understand the formalizing of a motion, but are we not already going through that process that you're wanting a motion for? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, I mentioned this when I came in, I'll say it now here. I served in the legislature for 20 years, and I was disappointed over time that we, the county, did not apply for the grants that from my end that we had to bring to us that we worked to get done as much as the towns did. They did a very good job of applying for money. I wrote dozens and dozens and dozens of letters from the delegation as the delegation chair to support their applications for X. I can't even remember doing one for the county in general, coming from the county. Now, maybe they were doing them, but if you knew how things work, if you have your delegation and your congressional delegation all working together on these things, there's a much greater likelihood of getting your grants, because there's so many applications. And that's what the other counties do. I mean, their leadership goes down, they meet with the folks, they tell their story, and they're successful. And I get there, it's in the budget books for the state, and you look at the number of projects that are allocated for at other areas, and there's tons of them. And Carroll County's list is usually very short, unless it's attached to the town. And they, like I said, Senator Reedy worked very hard for Manchester this year because they approached them about money for their wastewater treatment plant. And he worked very hard with MDE on their application to move it forward. I don't see that effort. I didn't see that effort for a long time of asking for our help. And I was always willing to do it. I helped all the towns for a long time. Our whole delegation did. And I don't see the results of it coming through if we are applying. I don't know. I don't see the results, and you can see the lists in the 90-day report. Every year it comes out. It should be out in about a month. You can see the lists of projects that everybody gets. There's tons of them. And some of them come through MDE or they come through some other agency. But we have had a lack of presence on that list for a long time, and I want to make sure that it's not just our staff applying, because staff has got to do that. But the way you get things done in the state, and maybe in the federal, is to bring it to the elected leaders' attention, and it becomes elevated if they prioritize it. And that's how it works. I mean, because they get so many things, if your delegation's behind it and your commissioners behind it, it tends to rise up, and you meet with the folks, and you tell your story. It's just like with anything else. It's how do you market what you're trying to get? And I want to do a better job of that, because in my experience, we had not, and I complained about it for many years privately, and now I'm here as a commissioner, and I'm responsible for it, and I'm trying to share my knowledge of what is effective, what I believe to be effective. I'm not saying it works every time, but it's been very effective, and we spent a lot of time advocating for those things. And I would like to have that opportunity, and we don't even know what grants have been sometimes applied for. We get them when...
Yes, any application is brought to the board before it's applied for.
Okay. So on this, and there's certain areas that we do a good job on that sort of automatically happen. A lot of with citizen services, I think we do a very good job, and I think ESAC's been doing.
We ask for money from the state every single year through our letter. I have to say that with the board.
I guess the question I have, I don't mean to interrupt you there, would be this. I know and I understand your perspective is serving as a delegate. I've served on a number of nonprofits, and we filed for grants over the years. I've been a part of that personally. I've sat here for the last, 3.5, almost 4 years, and we have applied here on the county level. Now, has the county in previous boards maybe applied for as much as some of the other counties? Of course not. Should we maybe be more actively participating and looking for things? I think there's always room for improvement. I think we can all agree on that. I guess my only question right now is, we have a process, and those things, we are applying for grants. I guess the question would be, are you looking more or less just to have an update on grants? Because if that's the case, I understand the direction you're going here. What I'm concerned in, you had mentioned something about the PFAS money currently in the budget. So are you suggesting we not allocate that money for the current PFAS projects and instead look for grant money?
I'm suggesting that it should be, I believe it should be paid for by grant money from what I saw at the MACO conference and what I read in their report. And maybe there's different pots of money. There's also federal money. In fact, Mayor Nevin got federal money for the $18 million he got for his remediation, almost exactly the same issue. They were building a new fire station on top of the foam. Instead of remediating and taking it all away, they built on top, and then they upgraded their water system, and it's being helped at the water system level. And it's pretty much covering the cost of that remediation. So they're solving the problem in a different way, which is more cost effective. I think it's more, to me, there's more certainty that you're going to be able to solve the problem at the level of the well or at the water treatment plant than this unknown dirt and how far you go down and what you remove. I think it's not as,
Again, that's not what this project is. I
No.
just want to be
No,
clear.
it is
This
not.
project is, if you want to build the building, then you have to remove
Move
you have to flatten out, move the soil, remove the concrete and flatten out the soil. You know, I always like to tease that the boys with all the big toys like to move all that dirt around. So when they're moving all that dirt around, it has to be removed, and it's PFAS contaminated, and so it has to be handled especially.
Quick question for budget. So we have this current money allocated in this upcoming budget. Is there anything stopping us from continuing, which I know we do on a variety of categories, to look for grant money that we could use to offset this?
Well, there is danger.
Okay.
If we have this money budgeted and we were successful getting a grant, most of them don't allow for
Supplanting.
supplanting.
Planting, yes.
So we would kind of disqualify ourselves. If we take this money out in hopes of a grant, then nothing is going to happen until we get a grant or we have to budget it again.
No, I understand. I guess my other question would be real quickly, are there not other potential future projects that we need? I mean, we all know PFAS is not going away. I would believe that we could utilize grants for other PFAS-related remediation. I mean, not to go on a soapbox this morning, but I'm drinking out of a plastic bottle of water, so I'm probably, ingesting microparticles right now. I think the best thing, from my perspective, I think we continue to look for grants. I think if we want to have a discussion from the staff perspective with the Board of County Commissioners about what grants we do apply for, I understand where Commissioner Krebs coming from on that side of things, and I would support that because I know there's grants I've asked for from time to time in different areas. I'm a little, I guess, confused, for lack of a better way of putting it, as to if we take this money out, I think we're kind of putting ourselves at risk. That's just my thoughts.
I just want to read what MDE said. Well, first of all, the PFAS is in it's in playground, rubber tiles, mulch, turf play areas. I don't know what Anne Arundel County is going to do about their turf fields because they're all done probably with product. It was done years ago. They have turf fields everywhere, and they all have PFAS in them. So I'm not sure how they're going to easily replace all those fields. There's so much. It's in our Teflon pans. It's in everything, clothes that people wear, and yet we're spending a lot of money on this one issue. And it's very complex, and that's why MD is they're actually doing a study this summer on PFAS and on the biosolids. Right now, we're allowing biosolids to come from out of our county to be put on our fields, spread on our fields. They have PFAS in them. So on one hand, we're spending $8 million to remediate X, but we're still bringing in biosolids from other counties. I don't know that we have a control over it,
Yeah,
but
I was going to say, please keep in
No, no,
mind,
I don't-
the MDA regulates that,
Yes.
so I don't want to
And-
give people the impression that
we-
we
I don't-
are allowing it.
But they come here, and now they believe these biosolids have a lot of PFAS in them. And so we're still bringing that in, and then we're remediating over here for something that Baltimore City says that we supposedly need to do because of the drinking water, which we drink too, and I drink it. And it's a large sum of money, $8 million. And it says here, PFAS accumulates in soil, especially near high-use playgrounds and fields. It may infiltrate stormwater and drainage systems. Runoff can impact waterways. What they're doing now, they're designing PFAS filtration to make sure your water is safe coming in because there is a feeling that it would cost, it's another carbon. PFAS is the new carbon. Are we just taking that grain of sand and virtue signaling, saying we're fixing it, or are we trying to really get to the root of the problem? So it's very difficult, and as I said, there's a work group this year on sewage sludge PFAS regulation. I would set strict guidelines on PFAS concentrations in sewage sludge, which is biosolids that we spread on our farm fields. It requires monitoring now at a certain level. They're actually thinking about changing the levels, but there's a heavy focus on ag fertilizer, and that we have a lot of ag land that these biosolids are being put on. So there's talk about future cost drivers. Long-term increase in capital planning budgets, where does this stop? I mean, what other areas do we have that have some of this high concentration? So one of the recommendations that they have, which we should be doing, is developing PFAS-aware purchasing standards. I'm not sure if we have that. Require PFAS disclosure and certifications on our RFPs. Look at track installation dates, materials types, warranties. Plan phased replacement of PFAS risk services. Enhance community participation. And then a long-term plan, and I think a lot are coming to the fact that if you at least protect your drinking water, which we all care about, probably is going to be the easiest thing to do than trying to replace and remediate all of this stuff that is on the land today, and the levels have not been, what is safe. So, some of the local governments are suing the chemical manufacturers. Some have filed independent lawsuits. I know Mr. Hines said that we were involved in one of the class action lawsuits. Harford County has established a PFAS task force because they understand that you're opening up a can of worms. You start with one, and it's like, what about this, this, and this? So monitoring the community water systems is very important. Identifying historical cleanup releases of the chemicals in Maryland, and connecting. One of the things MD has promised to do in their report in 2023 is to connect the, it's called CWS, kind of stands for something about contaminants level, with federal funding to address PFAS contamination in the drinking water. As I said, it's not affecting our drinking water, this project. It's supposedly affecting possibly downstream. MDE's WSP is providing technical assistance to systems and connecting them with funding through Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, including the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund for Emergency Contaminants. It is MDE's goal to fund all PFAS-related projects that are submitted to MDE, and they will notify systems of available funding opportunities. Now, my question, I'm not sure who we applied to, but if they didn't accept it, is it because it's because of a reason? Is it because it's not a priority? I don't know, but that was what was presented to us. That's what I've been told, and I just would like to encourage us to, we have $5 million in the prior allocation, now we have another $8 million, it's $13 million on something that is it could open up a whole can of worms for lots of other things, and I think we should be aware of that, instead of just tackling it as it comes to us and say, oh, we got to spend this now. And I just would like to have us as a board give direction, as we've been asked to do many, many times, give board direction that we look at this remediation resources and also look at what is the problem we're not trying to solve. Does this solve the problem, or does it just help somebody think we're doing something? And
Commissioner, to your point, from time to time, Chris Hine will come to us with a report about PFAS efforts in the county, what's going on, what we're up to. So that is certainly in hand. And then, as Ted had alluded to earlier, the effort out at the Public Safety Training Center is not just to get rid of PFAS. We have to get rid of PFAS so we can build that new facility out at the training center.
And
so
it
is directly tied to a very specific, tangible thing.
I get it, but as I've said to you before, Hampstead did it and still built their facility. I'm not sure how they did, but they built the beautiful new thing over their site.
They were solving a water problem. We're not trying to solve a water problem here. We're going to do a construction project, and we're going to end up with contaminated dirt that we have to get rid of. It's really not about the idea of remediation.
All right.
We're moving a lot more than the contaminated dirt. We're moving way more than just where the site is. It's way more than that. It's way more extensive. So I think I understand what you're saying, but it's way more extensive than just where the site is going to be. So, again, I just would like to, I had a motion under the strategy for the grant advocacy for PFAS removal in general, but specifically for this, and a plan, but specifically for this $8 million to ensure that we are getting maximum look at this particular project first, and then in the future set a policy up on what we're going to do about PFAS removal, not just, whack-a-mole as it comes up.
Okay, if the board's going to act on this, going back to what Commissioner Gordon was talking about, if we intend to pursue grants here, I think we almost have to take the $8 million off of the project, or we're not going to be eligible. If we take the $8 million off, then this project is not moving forward. And that's a choice you can make. I just want to make sure that we are consciously making that choice.
But you just mentioned a little bit ago that we can always move money around. So it's not taking it off, it's just taking it off specifically so it's not there as a prior, excuse me, the prior allocation. We have $5 million already built in as prior allocation that's unassigned to any project. Then you need another 3, and we have a lot of unassigned money. So we technically could take another prior allocation if we determined that we wanted to move forward, that we could do that at any time. Is that true?
Yes.
I'm just,
With all due respect, I can't support that, and the reason why is because the development of the Public Safety Training Center is a tangible public good, and there is a public safety component attached to it. And while I understand from a fiscal standpoint, I think all of us support the pursuit of grants and alternative funding, but given the nature of this project, I'm not comfortable moving around money that we've allocated for a specific public safety project with the intent that we expect or hope to get some kind of grant funding. I understand what you're getting at, I do. But again, this isn't for PFAS remediation per se. It's again, as Ted had mentioned, we've got to build this building, but to do that, we have to remove dirt that's contaminated with PFAS, and that's what we have to do with it, so.
and I don't believe that the project has been years on the books. I don't believe that this would delay the project necessarily. I don't want to delay the project either. I don't think that would be necessary. It would just make us put a little more effort into getting the grant money, but I won't belabor that. I'm willing to do that. If nobody else is willing to do it, it's okay.
Well, but Commissioner, to your point though, and again, I respect where you're coming from, but when you make, when we talk about, well, is it going to delay it? Is it not going to delay it? I'm concerned that it is, not least of which because we don't have Chief Robinson in front of us saying, well, if you put this off for another 2 years, no big deal. What came to us through the course of the budget this year was that the further development of the Public Safety Training Center was a contingent, immediate kind of thing. And so I don't want to risk putting off the development of our public safety apparatus, with the intent that we might get some grants. But I understand where you're coming from, but I just don't have, the requisite information to be able to make that choice. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Lack of a second, motion dies.
Let's see what else I just had a question about some money and where it is. So on a couple of these projects, one was Riding Our Way, we had a prior allocation from a developer of $220,000, and we're not doing the project. So where does that, first of all, I never saw it in that project under a prior allocation, and we've now taken that project out. So how does that money get then redistributed?
Well, right now, I'd say it won't. It's still sitting on the project, right? I guess if we settle that we're not doing Ride Hour, then we'd have to look back to whatever agreement there was with that money. I don't know offhand what the agreement was.
But it doesn't show up under a prior allocation. That's what I'm wondering, because on one project, Monroe, they have a prior allocation of $32,500, but on Ride Hour, there was no prior allocation yet. We've been told that they put $220,000. So do they all get put to, if the developer puts money in, does that show up consistently as a prior? I'm not sure why it is not there as a prior allocation.
Actually, Heidi and I were talking about this not too long ago, and I don't remember if this specifically was the case, but sometimes when we have a public works agreement happen after a budget and money comes with it, it doesn't show up in a budget. And we actually have been talking about, this is a little bit of a hole in the process, and what do we do with that? But this is a very recent discussion, sometime in the last couple weeks, probably.
No, and the reason I'm asking, because when I first got in office, I was looking at the budget, and the only allocation from a developer in the 5 years that were in the budget, prior allocation, was this $32,500 of all the years. And I'm thinking, I would think that there was more participation than that. And I knew there had been the participation in Riding Hour. Maybe there's others. But it just doesn't reflect the truth of that project. And it would be nice to show, and maybe there's others in the RIDE. Now, that one, again, it should be in the prior allocation. I'm not sure where it sits, so when the money comes in, it gets put somewhere. And so,
Again, in the financial system, it is there. You can go see it. Just when it happens mid-year, we have no way right now that it gets shown. And again, we're recognizing that as a whole that needs to be fixed. We just haven't figured out how to do it yet. And there aren't very many of the developer contributions. So you're not missing a long list of them. There just aren't that many.
yeah, and that's another issue that will come up eventually, but we have very few developer contributions to anything, and I'm finding that's a very abnormal process in county governments, that usually that the development does pay for itself, whether it's a road project, whether it's open space that they have to allocate to the county. We don't have any impact fees. So our development is actually, the burden is getting back on the current taxpayers. And I am opposed to that. I think development should pay for itself, and we certainly should not being paid, the direct connections to things, we certainly should not be being paid for. So fundamentally, I think that the commissioners need to understand that that is the current practice. It was current practice years ago that we begged people to come to Carroll County. Well, now we're a place people want to be. So we need to make sure that we are, it's certainly not unusual. I know Queen Anne's County, we talked the other day very briefly. Queen Anne's County, they do big projects, and they get money for their fire department. They get money for their roads. They get money for open space with a project. I mean, it's part of the agreement that this is the impact, and I think we should be doing that. Either we're not providing the service or we're paying for it, and that is not necessarily a business decision. So
That's a position that this board could take. I just want to say that it was not the position of previous boards. And you can dislike it, you can think it's wrong, but that's where those boards were.
And I agree, and that's why I'm bringing it up now, because I want to put everybody on notice that that is the position that staff has been tasked with, is to pay for, to pay for these things, for us to pay for them. I am opposed to it, and I think that, others should come out and we should make a statement that development should pay for itself, and we should be a little bit more proactive in getting things for the taxpayers versus burdening them or not doing anything, and we don't tend to do that. And I thank you for being transparent about saying we're still going off of what previous boards direction was, and until we change it, that would not change, because staff needs change in direction. So for New Windsor Middle School, I know we sold that. So where do the proceeds go for the New Windsor Middle School?
That will show up in FY '26 fund balance. It would be part of your unassigned fund balance.
Okay. So but it really affects it's really a fund balance for this year, right?
It was received in '26. We're in fiscal year '26,
27.
so it'll show up for fund balance at the end of this year.
Okay, so it's going to add to, right now, if we were looking at the budget next week, it would show up in that fund balance. So we would have additional money that could be spent in a fund balance.
It's already in the numbers you've seen.
Okay, so it's been included, so it changed from when we got the budget, that
No,
fund
it
balance
was
went?
included because it was sold back in March.
What didn't transfer till April, but the money didn't transfer till April, I don't think.
I thought it was March, but
The
whatever.
projections of fund balance include that sale. So it's not going to bring you any extra money. It's already in the mix for you.
Okay, I thought we got the numbers way before that.
I don't remember the timing now, but we knew what it was going to be. We could have built it into the projection before the actual transaction happened.
Okay. Let's see, PFAS. Get that. I feel like I'm missing something, but I don't remember what it is. And listen, you all do a very good job. Our job is to ask the questions. Our job is to understand the budget and prioritize the budget. And I'm in no way criticizing what you're doing. What I'm trying to do is make it more transparent to us ourselves and to others on how we account for and spend the money that, if we don't understand these things, I know you do, and I think our financial statements have always been, we've had a clean audit, which means we're putting the money in the place where we say we're going to. They don't decide whether we're spending it, how we're spending it. They just tell you if it's going into the right pockets, and that's always been a clean And you've always given us straight answers, and we appreciate that. We just have to let you know which things we need to be able to understand some of our choices that we could continue to make.
So procedurally, while Commissioner Krebs tries to find the last thing you wanted to talk about, procedurally, obviously, we're going to have to adjourn the work session, but do we need to take a vote to advance the adopted budget for a final vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, one other thing, and we talked about this in general. There are a number of items we put in the budget that we all agreed with that need some, I call it budget language or funding guidelines, and we spoke about them as things went along, whether it was CCVs or VIP. As the, excuse me, the county attorney said, it's clear in state law that we can't just give money to nonprofits without a purpose. It's in state law. Whether you want to change it or not, it's been there for years. Everyone's been provided with that information. I gave it to y'all when you first got in office. It says, here's the groups you can give to. It's clearly identified. Never been changed, never been asked to be changed. I just wanted to make everybody, everyone was aware of that. So if we want to just give money to a group, you can't do that unless it's one of the 4 groups that are delineated, unless you have a purpose that they're giving you something in return. So I was suggesting to make sure that we are compliant with the law of just not giving money away to nonprofits or to others without services, that we do MOUs for some of the funding that we have already allocated for, and there's a number of them, and we supported doing these things. But whether it's the Chamber or Magic or VIP or Visa, I know we have a contract with Ride With Me, which is a contract, they're giving us services, they're not, make sure they're compliant, but they have a contract to say, here's what the service, so that, that's in place. But for these other ones, we should have some type of memorandum of understanding on what it is they are providing for us. What service are we expecting to be provided for this money? Because we have to. I mean, nobody's here babysitting us on it, but it's the law. We trying to follow the law. So I don't know if you want to work on that budget language for those costs of, there might be more of them, of the MOU language for those nonprofits that we want to, we have a general plan from CC Visa. It's been worked out that we clearly want to give more money for the volunteer fire departments, and they presented a accountability measure of way to do that. I haven't looked at it in detail, but we should have that in place to say we're giving this money for this, and this is why, and it's clearly accountable. But how do we make sure that that is in place for all of these groups? And I just had a list of a few, what the expectations are. I know I questioned early on $20,000 for social services for the state of Maryland. I don't know why we're giving them $20,000. We've done it forever. Maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. You say it's for foster care, but it should clearly have an MOU saying we're giving you $20,000 because we're not allowed by law to do that without a service coming back.
State agencies are different. County, intergovernmental transfers are different.
Okay, so I would say that
That's not
I
part
would
of
say
that.
for the purposes of us knowing where the money's going, that we should know where we expect it to go, even with the state agency, yet we expect it to go for foster, whatever we think it's going to, that we would have a document that just says this money is coming and this is what it's supposed, and they agree to it, that's going to what we believe it's going to. And that would, be something we do each year and make sure, well, it would be ongoing unless that changed, but we have a clear MOU that we have approved, the county commissioners have approved, what the expectations are of Carroll County Visa, VIP, the Chamber, anything, Magic, if they're giving us services, it would say to provide X. And if they're not included in that list of allowed, we should be, I'm not sure if there's others or not. Others give us services that are clear and they bid on, that's fine. But when there's no clear service, we need to have our ducks in a row.
There are two different things here. One is the MOU, and many do exist. Budget doesn't drive the MOUs. What you've called budget language, we have something we already do, but we will do more where we think the board has said they want something. And every year, after the budget is adopted, we send each agency what's called an appropriations letter that tells them what the commissioners agreed to give them. And we've always tried to capture, if we think there are special circumstances or there's something that's might be misunderstood or there's an expectation of something that's going to happen, we capture that in that letter. And again, we will try to make sure we've expanded that to meet what you've asked for.
And if there's something specific that in your brain, you think, I want this group to do this, we could put that in there with the expectation that, hey, we want to help with X. And so it just becomes clear what we're giving them the money for and how it's going to benefit them. I'm not opposed to doing it, but I think what I'm looking for too is I think that someone should have been advising the board all along that this is a requirement. I mean, we can't just give away money without having something like this. It's been in law for a long, long time. And we should make sure that, we don't all know that. I mean, I know it because I read it, and I think you guys were given it, but you probably forgot. And it's been a past practice of just not having that happen. But
Well, if I may, Commissioner, I mean, over the last couple of years, Commissioner Gordon and Commissioner Kyler in particular have been insistent about determining and making sure that nonprofits or any organization that we contribute money toward know what we expect of them. And the two of them have been very much on top of that the last couple of years. So
And-
they've
and I-
kind of been our go-to
I've
guys.
seen that, I've seen the law in the letter before. My humble opinion, Judge Stansfield once said this to me, if it ain't broke, you don't need to fix it, stay, case dismissed. I think it's a matter of what are we risking by doing it, and so far it hasn't been an issue. And yeah, I was aware of this law, and I think we've all seen it before, maybe didn't notice, but yeah, so yeah.
It also usually comes up in budget deliberations in one way or another.
So, and I
That's
appreciate
just-
you,
yeah.
and again, knowing what's expected, and this board is sitting here now, and I think it's great because we've talked about it, but unless something is written down, it is not a policy. Unless something is adopted by the Board of Commissioners, it's not a policy. You can say this is what we expect, but unless it's adopted by the board, as you said, past boards have adopted things that gave direction to staff. If it's not adopted by staff, a policy, it's not effective. No one is clearly directed that this is what they have to do. So, I mean, I think it's good that you've been talking about, but, I don't know what's in place in policy to make it enforceable. It would be something, and then it just gives some accountability to it. And again, I'm not opposed to doing any of these things. It's just we need to define what the expectation is with the money that we give out. And then the issue on the 990s, I see that the two of you have offered to step up and put a policy together. I know we get them when they first come in, but they just need to be looked at upon renewal to make sure that they are current. And have a-
Commissioner Gordon was the one who first raised this a couple of years ago to make sure that we were doing our best to try to keep up with the 990s and the nonprofits.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, we need a motion to advance the adopted budget for a final vote.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. And now we need, motion carried. Now we need a motion to adjourn for the day.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Let me think about it. Yeah, sure, I'll second it. I wanted to stay here till 1, but I'll second it.
We have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed?